What's up, people? My name is Dylan Fox. Welcome to the Eastern Lariat for a very special edition of the show. For another year, I had to do it. You guys can read. I'm pretty sure, I can't say everybody. I'm not judging you if you can't read. But if you can read, you know the title of the show. You know we're doing it again. Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame season is back in play. And that means we have to do a show about it. And by we, I mean myself, obviously. Joining me once again, as he does every year, as he's done for the past few years now, and it's been a hoot, to say the least. He is one half of the Emerald FlowShow, a wonderful show covering mainly great, I think, nowadays. I think he's preparing to transfer that into a full great promotion, but mainly Noah in All Japan. He is Gerard di Trolio, an active voter in the Wrestling Observer. Your vote matters. I can try to sway you the best I can, but ultimately you're here to drop some knowledge, some of the research that you've done, because I do know one thing I do like about you especially. There's been a lot of new voters over the years, and I'm sure I've said this before, but I know how much you take it serious and do the research to get in the best vote that you can of these people, whether we agree or disagree on them. So thank you so much for joining us once again here.
Dylan, it is so great to be back, and great to be back here with you and talking about this, because I know we're going to have a lot of fun.
That's right. And the thing with the Wrestling Observer, we are going to talk about, obviously, Japan is our zone. We're the Eastern Lariat. That's what the show's about. We have talked about other categories in the past, and we will briefly go over them again. I will say right from the jump to everybody, we have talked about these people multiple times at this point. So some of these candidates, for sure, you kind of can get a sense of where we're at with a lot of them if you listen to the show before. So we won't necessarily hammer home. It won't be a full comprehensive things. Consider it like a sequel show to our past shows that we've done. Like we've talked about different people multiple times now. So we will get into them for sure. We'll see what kind of knowledge we've done. I've done research as well, on these candidates. I'm not just making guesses on there, although that would be very fun, I think, if we did that. This year's very interesting because they've made some, people. First of all, there's somebody in the Japan candidacy, which I can't wait to talk to you about, that was in another category. They moved over here, which is that's happened before. It's not like it's unheard of that they would have it in the Observer newsletter. Even in the Mexico region, they have a guy that transferred over. Now they brought him back as well. So they've done it multiple times. You've seen new people coming on, people that are contemporary wrestlers, people that are legends. You have a good mix of people in the Japan category and really all over. But talking about Japan right now, the rules for the voting, by the way, is that we have the candidates for Japan, and we will talk about them here. And basically the way this is a change. It wasn't always like this, by the way, guys. This was a change that's happened recently where basically the amount of votes you can get in a singular category is built around how many people are in it. So, for example, this year in Japan, you have a maximum of 4 votes in Japan based on the amount of people that are involved. And for example, in historical candidacy, that's a 7 vote max because they have a lot more people to vote for. So you get more. The more people you have to choose from, the more votes you get. I know that Dave heavily weighs the Baseball Hall of Fame, which is listen. Anyone can say whatever they want about any wrestling Hall of Fame. The MLB Hall of Fame, the Baseball Hall of Fame, has to be the most corrupt in history of any sport or anything really. But he does like some of their rules. I said it before. I think I made a post. I was looking at some of my prior research into the Wrestling Hall of Fame, and I believe it happened with someone, and this is another thing, this has never happened in the Wrestling Hall of Fame either, because there'd be certain people that you think should be a 100% vote. But I believe something happened where Derek Jeter didn't get a 100% vote to the Hall of Fame, and everybody was very unhappy about that. And I was just thinking they need to go scorched earth on every voter and just get all new people in. But the Observer Hall of Fame is much more credible in all seriousness. I know some people will have problems with Dave and all of that stuff, but I promise this Hall of Fame is better than the baseball one. But it still has a lot of rules in it. So with the categories, you need a 60% vote, yes vote for your voter base. That differs from every category. So, for example, Gerard, that we were talking off the air, you don't vote for every category, correct?
No, I vote for every category except lucha because that's where my knowledge is the weakest.
Yes. So yeah, that is a choice you can make. You can vote for every category except for one. You could vote for only one category. There's some people that only vote for lucha, on these bouts.
You can vote for a category and not vote for anyone in it.
That's true. Yes, you can do that as well. So the rules are very interesting on that end. But regardless, you need 60% of the vote to get it in there for a guy to get voted in. Yes. Last year, there was a ton of people that got in. 7 people. It was a really big class. That's pretty abnormal for the Hall of Fame. What did you think about the results last year where, especially from Japan? I mean, I think the most controversial induction was clearly Tomohiro Ishii getting in last year, which was a huge jump up. Huh? Was
it controversial?
Well, a lot of people complained about it. A lot of people didn't like that too much. But it was a huge jump from 38% to 61%. You had the beauty pair getting in on their first go around, 63%. Antonio Rocca and Miguel Perez, 63% got in the historical category. Sergeant Slaughter, the Briscoe brothers, Jack and Jerry. Blue Panther made it in the Lucha region, the Mexico region, and George Kidd, finally the voters got some semblance of sense in the international region and voted him in as well. So, 7 different people made it in this year. What's kind of your vibe going into 2024's Hall of Fame? Do you think the amount of people that got in last year, I mean, Beauty Pair were the first time on the ballot. Panther, he was on before, they brought him back. They weren't really clogging up the lane so much. Do you feel like the amount of people coming in last year, do you think that will help or hurt some people's chances this year?
Well, I think in modern U.S. there's going to be a log jam. But I think it actually helps Japan for one anyway.
Yes.
Or Shingo.
Yeah. So we'll talk about Shingo for sure coming in there. And I mean, we'll talk about some of these percentages as well from last year because there were some people that narrowly missed out as well, both in the U.S. region and, Japan as well, especially the U.S. region. But we are the Eastern Lariat. We are a Japan show. So I think it's only right that we start in the Japan region. And I think I would like to start off with the new people on the ballot. Welcome again. There's some interesting candidates for sure that we could talk about. Some modern, again, some legends. And I think we should start off with a man who you wrote an article about. He moved over from the historical region, Tiger Jeet Singh, moving into the Japan region. And even when he was in historical, you advocated for him to be in. As, basically, there are certain candidates where they're kind of on the fringes, and then there's some others that are kind of like no-brainers to some voters. And I think he felt like a no-brainer to you. But how did you feel about Tiger Jeet getting into the Japan region? How do you think he'll do? And has that changed your thoughts on him any from where you were at before?
No, well, I mean, I did even more research this year, so which makes me feel a lot even stronger about it. Although I think being in Japan will help him. But I don't know, it just seems really obvious to me. He was a huge star in Japan. He was a sizable star in Canada, although it wasn't super long, but he legitimately did some huge houses in Maple Leaf Gardens, and he did a couple of what I think were probably big houses in Mexico, although the record keeping there is not the greatest. But look, historical significance, his entrance changed Japanese wrestling because Hansen and Brody ripped it off, and Hansen even cited it as an inspiration. He was also key because when New Japan started, it was Baba whose connection with the Funks was he had all the top foreigners. Singh became New Japan's top regular foreigner. Obviously, they had Karl Gotch and they had Andre the Giant, but those were not, working as many shows as Singh worked throughout the 1970s. So Singh was the top foreign heel for New Japan from very early on in 1973 with the famous angle in the shopping mall where he attacks Inoki and his wife. From there, we're talking about well over a decade of big stars. And then, of course, he jumps to All Japan in 81, I think. And he still has some more big sumo hall shows against Baba up until 1985. Then eventually at the end of the 80s, he goes back to New Japan, does a couple of big shows there where he's in tag team matches on the Inoki 30th anniversary show at Yokohama Arena, which apparently sold out. And then he had the 30,000 people in Kawasaki Stadium against Onita in 92. And, if you really want to count it, he was even on the Kawasaki Dream Show, which was another 30,000 people in 1985. Although, saying he was responsible for drawing that number, there's a lot of stars on that show. So it just seems to me his importance in establishing New Japan and his longevity and his influence on the foreign heel in Japan all sort of work together. And my point is, he starts sort of main eventing in the mid to late 60s in Toronto, and he's against Johnny Valentine, and they are drawing 5,500, 6,000 at Maple Leaf Gardens, but you can get maybe 18 to 20 in there. So the real sort of jolt to Maple Leaf Wrestling territory was the Sheik coming up from Detroit, and that's when you start doing regularly over 10,000 people in Maple Leaf Gardens. And so they're feuding. Just got some of the numbers here. The very first Jeet Singh versus the Sheik match, which main evented Maple Leaf Gardens on February 21st, 1971, did 18,000 fans. And I went on newspapers.com and read the story about it, and they talked about how fans were turned away at the door. Then almost a month later, on March 14th, they did another 18,000. March 21st, 1971. A week later, 14,000. September 26, 1971. And these are numbers that I could confirm in the newspapers as well. 15,000. Indian strap match on October 17th, 71. 16,000. Right? Now, that's their last match for over a year, and then it starts to cool off a bit. So, they do a singles match in 1977 in Toronto at the Exhibition Stadium, which famously is where Hogan and Orndorff had their match at the big event. That only draws 7,000. So, that's very Sheik typical that he completely bleeds a few dry in the territory. But just to put this in perspective about, okay, well, how much do you want to contribute this to the Sheik, because this is the peak of the Sheik's power in Toronto? Well, the Sheik versus Jeet Singh outdrew Bobo Brazil versus the Sheik in Toronto, which, of course, was also a very famous program from Detroit as well. So, I think you have to give Singh some credit for that, because he outdrew Bobo Brazil versus Sheik. And at that time, Bobo Brazil was a much more well-known international star than Singh was. And I guess, so, that's really sort of the peak in Toronto is about 3 years, 71 and 74. He doesn't really have much Hall of Fame level drawing prior to that, but although he was at the top of the card a lot. And then, so the biggest audience in Mexico I could find is on February 15th, 1981 against Connect in UWA, or Lucha Libre International, the UWA heavyweight title in Nacopan, and that's claimed 20,000. He has a few other main events between 79 and 81, which I assume probably drew well because they kept carrying him back for a couple of years. So, it just seems to me that he's a star in multiple countries, has longevity, he has the importance of helping to establish New Japan. It just seems so obvious to me. And yes, everyone's going to bring up the work rate. I don't give a shit. There's so much more to story than that.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think the big drawback against him that people would point to would be, man, this guy totally sucked by the modern.
There's other people that fit that bill already.
Yeah. And that's, but in terms of a drawing and his star power, there's really no argument against him. to be honest, especially when you look at this region. I mean, this is one of those things that's kind of, you have to look at it by the observer letter of the law. They always kind of break it down into three categories, so to speak, that we're judging on. They do have a criteria for this. It's not like just, hey, just vote for them if you think they're the greatest or whatever. They always try to bring it up. The work rate is one of the three main categories. Drawing power and star power is on there. And historical significance as well is the third category that everyone looks at. And there's kind of a fourth thing that is like unmeasurable. Like it's not like you can say, oh yeah, you're wrong or right. It's just kind of a feeling that they have in terms of being a legend. And I think a lot of these newer people, not to rip on anybody, but a lot of these people that get on the ballot nowadays, how can we say so and so has historical significance? How can we say so and so is a legend when they're in the middle of their careers? That's one of the biggest rule changes I wish that would be made on this Hall of Fame, would be to up the minimum age requirement on it. Because we're comparing Tiger Jeet Singh in the same category as Zack Sabre Jr. That is they're so far removed from each other, both stylistically, but also just in terms of the era and what they brought to the table. Like, to me, it's hard to say these modern people feel like legends the way that a Tiger Jeet Singh does. That still gets brought up to me by older fans to this day, like people who were kids watching when they were there, and all the memories they have of his insane entrance, to where the work rate, yes, it sucked if you want to grade it by the letter of the law, and you're not wrong by saying that, but also that's not really what made him a legend, but he's a legend nonetheless.
Yeah.
It's
funny because I say to people, to me, he's I think he's even a stronger case than Shingo. And I also think that he's a stronger, he should be in automatically just for his Japan work, but I feel like I need to bring up some of his other international success, because you just got to sort of hammer it into people because they really want to drag their feet on him.
Yeah, there's a couple of candidates. In the rest of the world region, Gorgienko, who's back in there, you look at his run, he was all over the place, somewhere like that, outside of America, of course, except for the U.S., but there are multiple candidates like that have had great success, not just in the region they're listed in. Dory Dixon's another one in the Mexican region, had great success in Texas, in his time. Yeah. So you've got two different countries that they're a part of, not just the region they're listed in. That stuff should count as well. Same thing for Tiger Jeet here. After every candidate, I will ask you two questions here. We can kind of move forward with that because, again, I really don't have any arguments towards you, just to kind of tack on to what you said. Tiger Jeet, would you say he is a Hall of Famer? Never mind your voting pattern. Just, is he in? And obviously, B, are you voting for him?
Oh, do I think he's going to get in?
Yeah.
I don't think so, to be completely honest.
He struggled in the historical section.
Japan might fare better because they might have seen him.
Yeah.
Of course, I will be voting.
I also think this is, I think especially if you're a historical voter, it just depends, because a lot of people have come in that are a lot of these voters nowadays. You are probably somebody that I would not consider like a guy who's around in the 70s, because, you weren't alive then, obviously, no. But also I think you're more of a veteran, so to speak, in terms of following along the wrestling scene than a lot of the other voters that have come in recently. There's a lot of people.
Okay. So I have a couple of things to actually say about that.
Yeah.
First of all, this fall marks 25 years of watching Puro for me.
Oh, congratulations. That's awesome.
Well, here's my theory. It might be a bit mean-spirited, but I'm just going to get off my chest. I think the overwhelming success of New Japan breaking out and building out a true international audience has led to the creation of people that fancy themselves experts on Japanese wrestling that really do not know as much as they know. But I cannot tell you how many of those people have ballots, though.
Well, I definitely agree with that for sure. And again, but I know there are some voters that are, like you said, are coming up, and eventually we're going to get to that point where a majority of the voters came up in the Okada and Tanahashi era, and that is their linchpin for a lot of this. Which, I mean, we've seen it. We've seen it in both America and Mexican side, or not Mexican side, but Japanese side, where in America, a majority of the Hall of Famers, even if they are from a different country, or different company, have had a WWE run. That matters. You say look no further than AJ Styles. A lot of his stuff was before WWE that should be considered a Hall of Fame worthy ballot, and he couldn't even get past any momentum in there. But when he had the WWE run, he's suddenly in. Sting had a very similar case where he just showed up for a cup of coffee and suddenly that pushed him over the top. In Japan, New Japan, category is going to be a big thing. We've seen guys like Marufuji and Sugiura not get 10% of the votes and get dropped off in the past few years. So, I mean, we're going to talk about another candidate now that this is this is kind of a great segue into who we're about to talk about. But Kento, which you also wrote an article about recently. I would highly recommend people check out your work on that. You've done good stuff there. Kento, he's a guy that's going to have to overcome the stigma of not being a New Japan guy. And not just the stigma of it, but also just, I feel like, the lack of people that have seen him that much. I think you're going to have to go in, and he's going to have a really hard time this year. But I do think it's interesting. Both he and Zack are on this ballot. I've heard more discussion about him than Zack, even though he's not a New Japan guy, in terms of people debating his merits on here. So what do you think about Kento, to explain that? And yeah, do you think that will be something he has to overcome, not just now, because a big point of your article was obviously that, like, you may vote for him in the future, but just not right now. Do you think that's something he'll have to contend with in due time?
Yeah, he'll have to contend with the fact that he's not in Japan yet. I'm joking, but
you never know.
Look, yeah, you never really know. Like I said this. Actually, I said this before when I was doing recording and talking about this yesterday. Like, I could see someone like Shingo being champion again in New Japan if there's a major injury, or someone like Shota Umino never gets over or something, and they give him the belt out of an emergency. I could see them signing away someone like Miyahara under similar circumstances. You never know. Depending on how desperate things get.
I remember when Shingo came over. We were still, me and Stringer were doing the show then, and we were talking about it, and I remember something had happened where I believe Wato was on his excursion to Mexico. I think it was Kawato, but he was still in Mexico at the time, just having a horrible run, like Kawato in Mexico. But we were talking about it, and he brought him up. They did an angle when Shingo came in where it's like LIJ's bringing in a new guy, like who's the mystery ex guy, and we basically, Stringer completely dismissed it, and I was just like, oh man, another like a Dragon Gate guy coming in. I don't know. I was really kind of down on it, and then it turned out that was Shingo. Nobody expected him to jump because remember he was like he had that. Remember that run where they brought in a bunch of guys like him, Ishimori, all were like, I want to go in America and I'm gonna go worldwide and travel the world, and then like 2 weeks later they're in New Japan making their debut.
Yeah.
But nobody expected those guys to make the jump, and New Japan did bring them over. They have the power to do that if they so choose. Kento is a little bit different because he is the top guy and the company's not in disarray like Dragon Gate was when Shingo left, and obviously a lot of people left after that. So he's pretty set and they have a good run, but I do think it's gonna be a test of the voters to really look at him in a fair way, because I don't think we've seen that.
Well, sorry, I was going to tie that into like why you say you think you see more discussion of Kento than Zack. I just think everybody's in agreement about Zack, whereas Miyahara is a much more interesting and unique case, I suppose.
True. What's your take with you? I mean, you wrote your article like a month ago or so. Have you changed any kind of feelings about that, or are you just kind of in the same wavelength as you were then?
No, my point in the article is like Miyahara, he's only headlined about, I think, 8 or 9 shows that have drawn more than 2,000 people. That's not a Hall of Fame drawing level thing.
It's not.
Not at all. Now, it would be interesting to see how he ranks in Korakuen. Like, how many Korakuens has he headlined compared to other famous wrestlers? That might be an interesting project. But I have not done that. And so, okay, so that's not it. Historical significance? Well, I know he kept all Japan alive, but that doesn't really seem like a Hall of Fame historical significance case. Now, did he bring it to bigger heights? Well, compared to where they were, yes. But it's very possible that if this company grows, it's going to be because of like Anzai and the Saitos, Aoyagi. Now, does Miyahara deserve some credit for like putting over like Anzai and Aoyagi? Sure. But then I guess we got to see how big all Japan gets and debate, how much of a role Miyahara did and how much of a role was Yuma Aoyagi. So, but I'm leaning towards not much historical significance at this point. So we're left with the work, and I think Miyahara is one of the greatest workers of his generation. I would say that he's been one of the best workers on the planet for the past 8 years, and I think that this means more than just the moves. It also talks about his persona and his connection with the crowd and how he works the crowd, which is second to none in many ways, and how he can control the crowd. His style is very minimalist in a lot of ways, but he picks his spots, and which also leads into my next point is I think he's going to be able to perform at a high level for many more years to come. We're about over 8 years since like February 2016 when he first won the Triple Crown of his run. But for me to like pull the trigger and say this guy's an all-time great worker that could get to Hall of Fame level, I'm going to need a few more years of high level work before I feel comfortable. So I would I would wait like another 5 years before I looked at Miyahara again.
Absolutely. I do agree with that. And I'm pretty like people who are there's still chapters in this man's story left to tell of his career. He's not at the end of the road. So automatically I'm kind of against even considering voting for somebody like that, just on paper. But it's just, to me, he's a great worker and very important to the history of all Japan for sure. It's just one of those things where how much does that mean to you in terms of a Hall of Fame worthy accolade? So that's one of those things you have to look at. As a worker, like you said, I mean, we saw Ishii get in where his in-ring was his calling card. It was not about him being a draw, and I think that's what threw a lot of people off, or his star power per se.
Well, here's the thing.
Yeah.
Ishii's probably a bigger draw than Kento Miyahara, though.
And he had a very similar status to what you said about being the king of Korakuen, pretty much. Like Ishii was that before Kento was in New Japan, and we talked about him last year. I was in favor of him getting into the Hall of Fame for the record. I think he totally deserves it. But I know a lot of people that rub people the wrong way because he wasn't a main event player, and I think that's what people get hung up on a lot as well. But you are right. Like when he was given opportunities in the G1 and his rare title shot that he had, he was successful in every metric. That he just wasn't given the opportunities to do more.
Ishii is a small draw internationally, which Miyahara has nothing on at all.
And he just has longer time of being one of the best wrestlers in the world. And kind of what I mentioned at the start, his matches are more acclaimed on a greater scale because New Japan has a much bigger reach.
Look, here's the thing. Well, I mean, you can debate. I mean, I've seen Ishii since like 2000. I really think that a lot of his early stuff, like Mission and stuff, and War, is really underrated. Yeah. But if you look at the sort of time from when he really sort of did his breakout in around 2013, getting in last year, like that's 10. That's like he had at least 10 years of a run of being considered one of the best in the world.
Yeah, I do agree. And Kento, I think the draw is definitely no. I mean, you said it yourself. Like, he's not even in double digits. Getting that level of attendances that you would even point to like that. Really, I think a lot of people consider that. And I think it's a bigger point that we have to look at as well, because it's something I think we debate every year, especially now, where the modern standards of things are so different compared to now to to where they were before. Again, that's not a Japan thing either. You could look at it in America. There's plenty of people that would.
Well, look, here's the thing though. If you look at the tendencies that WWE now, it is in line with some other very historical hot periods, whereas Japan is down.
Significantly. Yeah, Japan's significantly down.
Compare the debate over. Look at Hayabusa's drawing record, and people aren't even sure he's a draw. But look at what FMW drew compared to anyone else.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring that up when we got to him.
Yeah,
it's like if a company now was doing what FMW did in the dark days of FMW, the end times, it would be hailed as a very successful company. At this point, it would be way up in the mix. And back then, it was everyone was panicking. The thing I would say about the American is that we're kind of jumping around here, but I think it's worth mentioning. It's hard to compare modern people because so much is put on their avenues of revenue are so much different now than they were before. Whereas before, pay-per-view was such a huge deal. Now that's really more of an avenue to watch your shows on Peacock or Netflix for significantly less money. The company thrives on TV deals more than live attendance now more than it ever did before.
AEW now. They don't even have to sell a ticket in their
they don't have to sell tickets at all. Like I said, and they still get a huge deal. Yes, that is a good point as well. And you can't really just. It's hard to quantify, is a singular person in WWE the draw, quote unquote, to a lot of these shows. And I mean, there are some examples which we may talk about in the near future. But for the most part, a lot of people put it onto the company. So a lot of people argue against changing the standards. And I mean, it's something, I listened to your show a little bit that you did with Voice of Wrestling, Joe and Rich, and you said that, you mentioned that for Satomura, for example, again, we're jumping along again, but is her, and we kind of mentioned it with Kento, is being the King of Korakuen a Hall of Fame stat? For Meiko, is keeping Joshi up in the Dark Ages, is that Hall of Fame worthy? You don't have to lower your standards per se if you feel like that. If you do think it's Hall of Fame worthy, that's one thing. But I also don't think it's right to say, okay, well, if you don't put so-and-so in, we're just not going to have any new people. If you don't have any new people, then that's okay if there aren't people that match the Hall of Fame standards. And I think you could say that for the men as well on here.
Yep, for sure.
So
we'll get into this later, but I think you don't have to lower standards, but I think there's other ways. Because still, Ishii did change the conversation because we're like, okay, well, who really counts as, who really counts as all-time great workers? Which then you're getting subjective territory.
That's the thing. With Ishii, I would definitely agree with Ishii being in on the letter of the law. The way it works is that it's stated to have worked here in the Hall of Fame is if you are a Hall of Fame level person at two of the categories that I mentioned before, historical significance, drawing power, and work rate. If you've got two of the three Hall of Fame, then you should vote yes for him or her. And if you are so exceedingly overwhelmingly great at one of those categories, that's also a yes. And Ishii was exceedingly overwhelmingly great as a worker. He was not a Hall of Fame draw. I'm not saying that to discourage him, but he was not one of the top stars in the history of the business. He was a great player for sure and did good when given the chance, but he was not selling out dome shows left and right or anything like that. It's not against him, but it's also not nobody voted for Ishii because they thought he was one of the absolute top stars of this generation. They voted for him because of his great work rate. Historical significance, I think, could be more complicated, but only because we haven't given him time to breathe. I think if we look at it, we'll see what his, legacy and historical significance is later on down the line. I mentioned it last year that I do think there is something to that more so. But the fact of the matter is, like you said with Ishii in, now it kind of opens the door up for more work rate based candidates on. Kento, in my opinion, is a fantastic wrestler, but I do think there are some flaws in his game. I think the most noteworthy would be something I've had problems with a lot of people. It's not just him. He's not the first person to be a victim of this, but I think you'll see it a lot. If you look at any of his matches on Cage Match, almost all of them will mention the Kento formula that he has. He's a very formulaic worker. Now, that formula totally works in the context of All Japan. It has led to him being a great worker. And he's one of these guys. You were talking about it as well. I heard you say there was a few years ago where people had fatigue on him in his matches. He was always the Triple Crown guy. Things were a little stale. They were a little hard on him. And I said it even back then. If you asked me what I thought of Kento, I would probably say, Kento, he deserves it. He's great. I do think he's a little overrated in terms of an in-ring guy. And then at the end of the year, suddenly you like, oh, he's got 44-star matches. It's one of those things where you look at him and I don't really think of him like, I kind of don't like him. I kind of do like him. I don't know what to feel. And then at the end of the year, he has all of these great matches. And even though I criticized him, I cannot deny his body of work at the end of the day.
Well, look, just my take on the formula thing is you're not wrong. And of course, I know you disagree, but there's also the people that say that about Ishii. He has a formula, but
yes.
Let's also. But you could say.
What about Okada?
Oh, yeah, I was going to say Flair and Okada.
Yeah. But I was critical of those guys as well. So to be fair, I was not one of those that were banging on that. I mean, and I love and respect them obviously now as wrestlers. If you look at their overall total of their careers, Flair at the end kind of sucked, to be honest. But obviously his peak, no one can deny. He was a huge star and a huge wrestler. Okada, same. But the formula definitely is, again, like I said to Kento, he's not the first one to do that. But I just think if you were going to look at that, I think he mainly overcomes that for me. I don't know. Okay, let's put it this way. If you were to rank a wrestler list, like the greatest wrestler ever list on PWO that I voted in years ago, and I know they're going to do another one in a couple of years now. If you were to make a top 100 wrestler list, do you think Kento would be on it for the greatest in-ring wrestler of all time?
Yes.
Is that alone Hall of Fame worthy?
No.
And I agree with that. Yeah.
Like if I did a list, I'm thinking maybe between. I have to sit down, and I could end up being lower. And by lower I mean closer to 1. But I'd probably put Kento in between 50 and 60. I'm just trying to think.
Right. And I've
500 and right now. But again, this is my point. Let's come back in 5 years.
Yeah, exactly. And I agree with that overall. To me, for a work rate candidate that is not a Hall of Famer, and again, I'm not saying he could be a good draw. He could be nothing. It's really not that relevant to me if your case is built upon being exceedingly great at the one other category. If for me to go that far for you as an in-ring performer, to me, you would have to be among the top 20 or 25 greatest wrestlers of all time in the ring. If you're not a draw, you don't have historical legacy or significance. To me, if you are, that's a top elite tier of worker that cannot be denied that you are a Hall of Famer. That would be my category, overall, or what I would think, or at least in the conversation, around that, like you said, because when we do the list, you may go a little higher, you may go a little lower. With Ishii, I definitely think he has that case that you could put it on there. With Kento, I don't think I would go that far. Top 100, perhaps. I don't know if I'd put him in the very top, the top 20, so to speak. And the other things, he's not.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I agree with you, but he could be. I agree with your article that you wrote that he could be in time. So with that said, what about Zach? He's another guy. We kind of compared him. They're the two new kids on the block in this Hall of Fame voting. It's an interesting timing for him, which maybe lead to some people, maybe, you win the G1 and then you win the big title. Is this what's going to put him over the top for certain voters? I wonder.
It might. So he actually might not do too badly, I think. But I will not be voting for him, and it's too soon. We're about to see if he can draw, and for work rate, a few more years. Yes, it's funny because I don't even have that much to say about him.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's an easy no. Like, to be honest, I just like, I like,
thing.
yeah.
I know you're not probably as high on Zach as other people, but I think there's be a decent amount of people that think that he's one of the best. He's been one of the best workers in the world for the past, probably since 2014, I think, when he first started getting attention and everything. So
Yeah.
that's that to think about. But I think he just needs a little more.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, he's a great wrestler. I'm not trying to downgrade him, and I think this is kind of the cardinal sin of the Hall of Fame itself and being into these debates is eventually it's going to lead to you not like talking not complimentary about somebody you otherwise like and respect. Him as a wrestler, I do like him a lot, and I think he's very strong, and I think he has a great fan base internationally for sure. I will tell you right now, I was very skeptical of making him the top champion of New Japan, and I continue to be. The early returns are not very good, to be honest. It's still early, but we will see.
Look, the early returns are not good even in his own country.
Yeah, I mean that's Royal Quest. Me and Stringer are gonna record a show tomorrow. He was at that show. We're gonna talk about that. They're going in there as well. But you are correct. That was not as successful as I think they wanted it to be. And we will see. Again, we'll see where it goes. We'll give him more time. This is his first chance This is his first chance as the top star of a major company. Like right now that we just entered.
Here's the thing: is given what's going to happen over Wrestle Kingdom weekend this year, especially if obviously we know that Wrestle Dynasty, but we don't know how many outsiders are going to be on Wrestle. There could be quite a few, right? So It could start to get difficult to be like, can we if those shows do well, saying, oh, Zach becomes difficult. I think.
Yeah, I agree. Overall, so I don't, historical significance. That's another thing that's going to take some time, and why I don't like these modern guys being on here. Draw, no, and in ring personally for me, no. But I do think he's a great worker and one of the best of the past 10 years. When I put him as one of the greatest of all time, again, for him to be a yes for me, he would have to be considered one of the top 20 or 25 greatest of all time. And that's just not how I feel about him, unfortunately. But I still think he's great, and I don't mind that they rolled the dice and gave him a legacy run as the champion, because he did mean a lot to the company to be loyal all this time, and he's got a lot of fans internationally. So it hasn't translated yet to anything sales wise, but we'll see how it goes. And if this run turns out to be a great run for him, then maybe that changes people's opinions. It at least gives us something to hang our hat on, which I don't think we have right now. Final new guy, another person you've written an article about, Yoshihiro Takayama. Back again. He was on the ballot a couple of times before in the mid 2000s, probably at the peak of his, lingering Don Fry effect run that he had. And he was off the ballot both times. And now he's finally back after all of these years. In your article, you basically were like, I wanted to come on here and tell you how great he was and he should be in the Hall of Fame. And then I realized he shouldn't be after I researched it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I asked Dave to put him back on the ballot. And to me, like, going back and I watched his success in real time, and he was so cool. And at that time, this is when Nagata was doing, the shoot fights, and Akiyama was also having a little problem getting traction as to be like sort of the way that they'd hoped him to be sort of the top guy in Noah, especially with Kobashi out with those knee injuries. So Takayama felt like a breath of fresh air, a guy that really did become a star unexpectedly in many ways, and actually ran with it. He was mostly a pretty good draw, but just for a couple of years, although he did have a couple of busts. Like there was a August 2002 show.
Was that the second one against Chono?
No, this wasn't the G1. It was against Fujita in the NWF tournament.
He had another match after the G1 match against Shono, by the way. That I think that may have been the semi-main event because I think Misawa and Shono had a match afterwards or something like that happened. There was something around 2002, and I have to refresh my memory. But he had a couple of runs in that 2002 run. He was like the dude in New Japan, like in terms of getting pushed. But yeah, that Fujita match didn't do very well.
But he still had great successes. Was a big star at a time when things were really starting to falter. Right, especially for New Japan, and amazing worker. I think one of the best in the world for a couple of years. I was saying, like, look, he was out between 2004 and 2006 stroke. His return match in 2006 in Noah sold out the Budokan, so I mean that's a feather in his cap. And I have him in great matches up till 2012, but nothing after that. And it's just like, okay, so it really was a very short amount of time, but he fell off the ballot in like 2005, and he suffered his career-ending injury in 2017. So I was just like, oh well, there's like 12 years of his career that no one has really reconsidered. But going back, and it was like, there's not enough there, even though he would be one of my own all-time personal favorites.
Yeah, I think Takayama, a good thing to look at with him that I think it is in his favor is kind of what we mentioned with Tiger Jeet Singh, that Singh, a great thing about him, and there's another guy I'm going to talk about historical, which I think this is worthwhile to note. It says something about you if you wrestle all over the place and you constantly are main eventing wherever you go. Takayama didn't have the international work, obviously, but the same is true of him. Wherever he went, he was a main eventer at the end of the day. Whether it was, he's one of only 5 people to hold all 3 major titles, together. And he was always pushed as a top star. I think a good thing for him as well, that I will kind of push back on what you said. You mentioned before, first of all, as a worker, I think he's one of the best. Like, I would take him above pretty much anybody on this ballot in terms of Japan, especially for his style. I think what you said about his longevity issues are there. That are very real, but I think at his peak, he was one of the greatest, that I've seen. And I really enjoyed him. I thought he was very underrated in terms of versatility, not just in terms of necessarily his style of wrestling, but what he could do. I think his tag run with No Fear, which I know you were a big fan of as well as I am, obviously. I think his tag team with Suzuki, very underrated. If you look at a lot of their matches in that time, they worked together great. They had great matches. They were put in big spots as tag team champions. And they were, again, very big stars, heavily pushed wherever they went. I think he's a guy that after his big run, because ultimately, if you're looking at his peak, it's 2000, really maybe 2001 to 2004 was like, that's when he was one of the best guys to me. He did take the time off with the stroke, but he came back and he still had some, he was still a very useful worker and pretty good. It's not like he fell off and became just a shell of himself. Someone like Tenzan to me would be how I'd run for that, where he was like world class level for a couple of years, and then he had all these injuries and came back and he didn't have what he had before. Takayama was still Takayama, even if he wasn't quite where he was before. And you mentioned that you didn't think of any carry jobs for you. So I did some research and I looked at some matches that I had rated in the past, and I do have a couple to throw at you here. I think first and foremost, so you mentioned the Chono matches in 2002. I think he got the most out of Chono that we had seen at that point in his career, where Chono was already breaking down and things of that nature. You compare him and Chono to even Kobashi and Chono during Kobashi's title reign, and I think Takayama got more out of him than even and then Kobashi was on an all-time legendary title reign in 2003. I would point to him against Muto in 2009. Where Muta at that time, I remember in 2008, he was the double champion. He just had this piss poor match with Goto, killed his momentum when Goto won the G1. And he was doing weird stuff. Remember when Muto challenged for the junior title against Kaz Hayashi? Yeah, he was throwing some weird crap against the wall in 2009. And things were about to get even worse when Shiraishi was jumping into All Japan. But Muto wasn't a good worker in 2009. And Takayama had a really good match with him then. I would say he was pushed in a major spot against Makabe in Wrestle Kingdom 2012. I'm not saying it was a great match, but again, look at most of Makabe's matches and compare it to that, and I think you'll see a lot better version. And I think the absolute peak of this argument would be him against Suzuki in the horrendous Noah run that they had in July 2015 when he was a GHC champion. You look at that match, it's kind of forgotten the time now, but if you watch that match, Takayama was clearly the better worker than Suzuki in that match as well. So even at that point in 2015, he had a great performance against a guy who was doing terrible against most of his opponents at that time. I think Takayama he has instances of being able to get the most out of his opponents, and I thought you underrated him a little bit on that point.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
In terms of the drawing era, again, he's another one to round about what I said at the start. He found his way to main events. He's a multi-time Dome main eventer, including one of the biggest of his entire era versus Nagata, which was coming off the heels of that Fry match.
Okay, well, here's the thing. That was semi-main evented by Kobashi versus Chono.
Yes, that is true. Yeah, you are right about that as well. But I do think he had a great, it's true. Like, you cannot take that away. Again, Kobashi was at the top of his game at the time, and Shono was still a name, even though he wasn't a great worker. No doubt about that. But I do think he made it in other Dome shows. Like you said, the one you mentioned before was papered, and some of them weren't as successful, like Fujita. But he was always pushed in the main events, whether it was in New Japan, Noah, or All Japan even later. I heard you mention and read that you wrote that when he was the Triple Crown champion in 2009, he did improve business, never mind his work rate. It wasn't to a Hall of Fame degree, for sure, but it was a feather in his cap, I would say. But I would say if you're looking at that 2001 to 2004 range, that's a Hall of Fame level run. I understand the longevity wasn't there, but I also don't think it was bad either. I think, like I said, he had a great match in 2015, and that was at the tail end of his run. He was on his literal last legs at that point, and he still was very useful in various roles for basically the majority of his career. So I think that there's enough there for me. And one last point I would say. So for me, wrestling work rate wise, yes, he is a Hall of Fame person. He's not maybe overwhelmingly like at the very top tier when you consider the longevity issues, but I would put him, I'd put him in the top 50 for me probably, or around the range you set up for Kento. Drawing wise, I think it's a little bit skeptical, but let me put this to you, because we have precedents for what I'm about to say here. MMA stuff, because I think that's a critique you could have of him. The Don Fry moment is what made him a huge star. It happened in MMA. It was not in pro wrestling, although it's been that spot's been parodied to death.
Stole it though,
Yeah, it definitely has Hall of Fame level influence just from that one match alone. But what I'm going to say is we have the precedents, whether it was somebody like a Sakuraba, like Funaki, even to me, Brock Lesnar. Like, that UFC run definitely helped his run. We have precedents that MMA counts for this Hall of Fame, and that does go with it. So I think if you throw that into the mix, I think that adds another element in terms of his historical significance as a star as well. That it's really hard for me to deny him when compared, again, we're comparing him against a lot of these modern candidates, which I'm a little bit down on. And I personally just think he's a better wrestler than a lot of these guys myself. So I think when you consider the legacy, again, drawing, I wouldn't fight you if you said, no, he's not a Hall of Fame level draw. The longevity wasn't there, even for the work rate. I can see that. But I think there's enough there. There's a case there to be made, at least. And I think of this group, I would put him among if I wouldn't vote for him, he would be right at the cut line to me. Like, I think he's above a lot of these other candidates, in my opinion.
Okay.
But you may not be swayed by that, unfortunately.
It just ultimately comes down to longevity.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so that's a good parody too. So you would say you don't think he'll get in, and you're not going to vote for him.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, okay. Like I said, I just wanted to make sure. I mean, maybe I changed your mind a little bit and gave you something to think about. But I think another case of that to me would be Toyota and Yamada as a team. Now, last year they had 22.6% of the vote. Um, and we spoke about them pretty at length on last year's episode. So they're a very basic case to me. They may be the highest peak of anybody on this in this category for 2 years, and like that's it. Like that's a big difference between these two and Takayama to me. Takayama's peak was great, but he was still very effective and relevant for long after that. Toyota and Yamada, when they were done, they were done. Like that was literally it in '94. They had a very brief reunion in June of 1997 which was basically just an angle to lead to Papa House for an LCO tag title match, which worked, and it was a great ass match, and they rule as a team. They have great wrestling. They have some of the best matches of all time, literally together, and they have main evented huge shows as a tag team, which was very difficult at the time. But it was only 2 years. So that's a really hard that when it's that low, there's literally nothing after. Again, it's not like some of these others where they may have fallen off and not been where they were, but they were still effective. There was literally nothing after that. It's really hard for me to sign them, even though I love them. I love them as a team. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I have them like maybe number 3 on best tag teams of all time, but it's just can't do this on longevity, and
yeah,
I don't know if there's really enough for Yamada as a Hall of Famer on his own. So,
do you think that's a yeah?
I admire Dave's dedication to all things Toyota to this day.
Well, I think it's fair to give them a shot to get in. And it's not like they fell off the ballot. They got more support than Marufuji did. Sugiura did. They got more support than TenCozy, and they've got more support than Meiko did as a candidate. So it tells you that there's something there, but it's just too short. If they had been 5 years at this level, I think that they would be much more interesting to look at to me, but it's just so short. But I love them a lot, though, and they are a fantastic team. Yeah. And they did do stuff before, like really 92 was like the 92 to 94 was their peak and ending. They did do some stuff before, but it just wasn't as noteworthy.
Did we talk about how Dave says you shouldn't take into consideration like breakup or angles or something?
Yeah.
Even though I really can't separate the hair versus hair from all of this.
So here's the thing. In my opinion,
in fact, their case weakens, I think, considerably without the hair versus hair.
I think this is the issue with that. I would like 99% of the time agree with Dave on that. However, in this particular case, if you just look at results and you look at that, I can understand why you would think like that. But I'm surprised because I know he was there like in real time, like before, I was a baby when this was happening, literally.
Yeah.
But if you really watch the full run of Toyota, like I have, look at the Eastern Lariat Patreon, patreon.com/Eastern Lariat. I have a thread on Twitter for Toyota. I reviewed a ton of Toyota matches, like 40 matches in a row of Toyota. I followed basically all of the important stuff and all of her story. If you follow it like that, you realize, yes, it wasn't really yes, it was a feud that led to the hair match, but it really wasn't a breakup angle. It was a part of their story as a team. And if anything, the hair match led to them as a team going to greater heights. It was so integral to this particular story that I think you should count it in this very rare case. But mostly I agree with him that wouldn't count. But I think in this very particular case, the hair versus hair match did not lead to a breakup. It led to them having even greater heights and success as a tag team. But even still, I wouldn't vote for them right now, even though I love them, and it pains me to say. Another good point, I think we can say this both here and with Inoki and Sakaguchi. There's other guys in the historical category as well, like, Steamboat and Youngblood. Do you think it hurts when one individual portion of the team's career overshadows, like, the team itself? Because if you're voting for Toyota, and obviously she's been in the Hall of Fame from the beginning almost, if you were to vote for Toyota now, this tag team would count for her candidacy. Like her tag stuff still counts for that. The problem is that it's way overshadowed by her singles career. And the same thing for Inoki and Sakaguchi. Inoki's in, but this tag team run was already a part of that, and Sakaguchi shouldn't be in on his own, like I think most people would say. So I just don't.
It's interesting because, Sakaguchi as a singles peaked at 51% in.
Yeah. So he would have a better case on his own. Yeah.
2008 at 51%. And he was on the back for 18 years.
That's interesting. They only had 10.6%. I mean, they were hanging on by a thread, and they may drop off this year, to be honest. Do you have any thoughts to save them, or are you just kind of like, nah, he's like you said, Sakaguchi may be better on his own.
I mean, important team in terms of, they were regular tag team in the 70s and certainly headlined some big shows, but they were never the focal point of the company because, I mean, Inoki at this time was still doing also his different style fights and everything like that. And, I mean, I would say Sakaguchi's a guy that I have not seen enough footage of.
Yeah.
But he's obviously important in the early years of New Japan, and he was the president of the company during the peak of the 90s from, I think, 1990 to 1999. So, there's something there, but I mostly get the vibe that he's like, there's a case there, but it just doesn't clear it.
And especially this tag team, I don't think is it at all. And it's nothing personal. It's just, and they were better on singles. But I mean, a lot of people also say that about TenCozy. They had 11.9%, and that's a common critique, is that they would be more interesting to look at as singles, which I agree with, to be honest. I think if you look at especially Kojima's case, he was the ace of a company. Tenzan could have been the ace, but they booked him horribly when Tenzan must suffer booking.
I probably wouldn't vote for Kojima as a singles, and I definitely wouldn't vote for Tenzan as a single.
And even still, I think those cases are better than them as a team.
Yeah. And as I've said before, where are the great TenCozy matches? There's not very many. That's
what I'm saying. You have to look for them, and they're just not. They're just not there. Although, funnily enough, we mentioned Toyota and Yamada. One of their most famous matches was the match against each other, where Kojima accidentally won them both titles, and everyone went crazy over it. Which was a legendary moment, to be fair, there. But they're just, it makes no sense why they're still on the ballot. Put them as singles, and we will let the voters decide. I agree with you. I don't think I would vote for them, especially not Tenzan, but I don't even think I would vote for Kojima. But I think there's a much better case, though, if you look at his run, and it would be much more interesting for us to talk about than the same thing we've said for all of these years, that they shouldn't be here. Meiko Satomura got 16.2%. She's living her best life in NXT UK, and they ruined all that when UK folded. Now I don't know what she's doing with her life. But it's just
countdown.
Huh?
Retirement countdown.
Yeah, they mentioned that on the other Sendai Girls show last month or whatever. So yeah, you're right about that. What do you think?
Oh, well, okay. So let's look at what is Meiko's top attendance. Her top attendance is 6,200 in Gaia on April 7th, 2002.
Well, that's probably because of Nagayo.
That's in a tag match with Akira Hokuto and Meiko Satomura versus Chigusa Nagayo and Ayako Hamada. And then her next biggest after that is the seventh biggest in Gaia history at 5,900 versus Manami Toyota on April 6, 2003. But all of the top shows in Gaia above that were like either Crush Gal reunions or Chigusa versus Linus. So, okay. Sendai Girls, there's some attendances, but they're at festivals, so you sort of got to throw them out because like 16,000 people at a festival. So the Sendai record is 2,800 for her 20th anniversary show on October 11th, 2015. This is not Hall of Fame drawing. This is almost Kento-ish territory. So I'll say this. Historical significance, I mean, I just don't think, look, I understand what she means, but I just don't think that it is like, it should not be considered Hall of Fame worthy, just sort of maintaining a Joshi at the level where you can run Korakuen a couple times a year. That just doesn't cut it for me.
Yeah. But I also agree, not to jump in, but I agree with what you said on the other show too. Where's the evidence that Joshi would have just? It's not like Joshi would have just died out like forever.
I said, and I believe this. There would have probably been a few more failed startups.
Yeah, Yeah, that's probably much more likely, but it's not. And I mean, her significance is great when it comes to who she's trained, but I do agree. Like, I think people said that's a common talking point is like, she's the one who kept Joshi alive during the Dark Ages. And I don't think that's really accurate.
And the training thing is an interesting debate because if you look at someone like people bring up training, but it's like there's someone like Diablo Velasco who's like almost in there basically on training. I mean, he trained Gory Guerrero, Harold Aguayo, and Mil Mascaras.
Yes.
Meiko doesn't have anyone quite at that level.
No, you're right on that. I mean, Chihiro is one of the top stars.
Oh,
you know, Kagetsu had a great run as champion in multiple promotions. And even Dash and Mizunami, like she's trained people and kept a company afloat. A lot of people aren't even listed on a cage match that she had a hand in. But yeah, when you compare her to Diablo Velasco, yeah. Like I said, it looks less impressive. Or even somebody like Hamada, I think, is one of his big things. On the Mexico side, I think he's another one. If you look at his list of people he's trained, it's like legendary people. Even Fujiwara, like the people he helped train, there's a stronger case for him than Meiko. So I kind of agree with you, actually.
So here's my scenario. I'm not going to vote for her, but I'm going to do some research. I'm not going to vote for her yet, anyway. Here's my scenario. Okay, there is I think another match against Toyota pretty early on in Sendai Girls in maybe 2007, 2008. And that was a great match. But then I really haven't seen anything from Satomura until she pops up again in Stardom in 20. For that.
I guess you missed the whole Kana feud then, if that happened. Yeah.
So, look, if you want to say that...
More on her later, by the way.
If you want to say she was one of the best workers in the world from 1995, because she's like Akiyama level rookie.
True.
From 95 to 2019, with that match against Sari, because you can't count anything she does since 2019, let's be honest. There's nothing there.
So amazingly, NXT UK did not bless us with 5-star matches throughout.
So I guess my point is, if you want to say she was one of the best wrestlers in the world for 24 years, I think you can make a case based on that. I would need to do more. But that's what for me, her.
I kind of look at her as like an amazing utility player of wrestling. Like she was important in a way that's not. Like I said, I think like it's not that she was unimportant. It's that what she did is not Hall of Fame caliber ultimately. If you look at it in terms of drawing power, in ring wise, I think she's a fantastic worker. Like, definitely one of the best Joshi wrestlers. In terms of combined longevity and greatness. I mean, even some of the top stars that like the absolute people would point to as the greatest of all time do not have her longevity the way that she does. Whether it's an Aja Kong, Hokuto retired like long before that and things like that. They do not match her in terms of longevity. But I also think that she will always be cursed to be in a slot that she's just not. She wasn't able to make the impact that she could, and we're still not really there yet with the Joshi scene, I think. Even now, even though it's definitely improved markedly compared to 15 years ago, 20 years ago, but still, I don't know if there's enough there drawing power-wise, unfortunately. And in terms of in-ring wise, she's great, but I also can understand why you might not see enough there, ultimately. But I would recommend checking out that Kana feud at least on there. It's well worth watching for all the fans out there. If you can see, some of her Stardom matches were great. She had great matches with Nanai, like at the very beginning of the Stardom. Obviously, the Kyrie match was like one of the best Stardom matches to me. The first one, like the draw, was like one of the best Stardom matches ever to me. She had a great matches versus EO as well, highly regarded. And then some stuff later on in Sendai with obviously people like Sihash that everyone loves. Did as well. I think it's worth mentioning. To be fair, was also the KOD champion in a men's company at one point in 2018 as well. Not to any. That was like literally like a month long thing. It wasn't no big deal, but still, it's a little fun footnote in her career as well. But long story short, do you think she'll get in? And you already said you weren't voting for her.
No, I don't think she's going to get in.
Yeah, me either. I agree. Hayabusa, 23.2%. What do you think?
I'm actually going to vote for Hayabusa for the first time ever. I think that some of the playing fields have been cleared, and the more I think about it, I cannot escape the historical significance. It's just, to me, that sort of puts it over the top. And looking back and seeing some of the things written about, like on Voice of Wrestling by Adam Berger, just like what we're talking about, like Hayabusa really is sort of a decent boss, sort of historically, right? So I think I've decided that I'm going to do it. And I was like on the fence before, but I've come up with it now, and I think, look, Hayabusa is going to remain on the ballot as long as Ospreay keeps doing those entrances.
That's the thing. The power of Ospreay's entrances will keep him alive in all of our hearts. To me, his case is simple. Like, it's what we kind of talked about it earlier. His drawing power on paper would be a no, but as we look towards more modern candidates, that standard feels like people are lowering it to make up for the weak. It's really more the weakness of the scene now than necessarily something to take pride in. But still, if you compare his drawing run, it's definitely not as history has looked upon it favorably compared to what they used to, I would say. In ring wise, here's the thing with him. Ultimately, what Ishii was to the in ring, he is for influence. Like, to me, he has to be one of the top influential candidates on this ballot in any region. Like, it's felt to this day. We talked about it before. Again, I don't want to repeat myself from like last year's show, but he is, and that's why you look at the numbers. He's always one of the top vote getters among active wrestlers. He was a top 5 guy in the last 3 years. So, it tells you there that his influence is still strong, and he hasn't wrestled in, over 20 years at this point. So I think he really, I could see it. I could see any argument against somebody who's really a one-note guy, because I don't think he's a Hall of Fame worker or a draw, but his influence level is so high that it's hard to deny him. And I do think, me personally, when I first started watching, I started watching less than you, less time than you. You said you watched it for 25 years now. I watched it closer to 15 at this point. But when I first started watching, I looked at him and I thought, man, I don't see what makes this guy so great. Like, I think he was really sloppy. But as time went along, I felt like I had kind of changed my mind on that, because it kind of fits him almost in his character in a way to be that kind of daredevil guy. When you look at the guy who's trying to fight against the odds of Onita screwing everybody in the promotion and leaving him and all of that stuff, it really fit his character, and he wrestled with a lot of heart, and I really grew to appreciate that as time went along, and I really enjoyed his efforts. I still wouldn't put him as a Hall of Fame worker, but to me, his case is all about the historical significance and the influence, which is extremely high. To me, not only do I think he should be in, but I personally would put him in my top 4 this year to vote for.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, and I don't want to dwell on it because I know this is not your favorite subject, but would you vote for Sabu?
See, I mean, he's kind of a similar case, right? Where it's like this sloppy guy who had a legendary run and is extremely influential. Has Sabu ever been on the ballot?
Yes, but he didn't do very well.
Oh, okay. I do think Hayabusa is probably a little more influential, probably a seasonable amount more influential.
Look, I mean, I think there's very obviously like connected to them very closely, but here's like the sort of thing is that I think I still see it's still more to me for the Ospreys and the young guys. It's still more Hayabusa than Sabu, I think.
I totally agree. And to me, his track record on top, again, maybe it wasn't looked upon favorably at the time. There's much more there to me, to him than Sabu.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Sabu
Yeah.
pointed out whenever he was given something beyond the ECW arena.
How would you think Hayabusa would compare to somebody like a Jeff Hardy, which I think is also a interesting comparison,
Um,
and who was the top star of his company at different points?
he's more influential than Jeff Hardy, I think.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I do agree with that. But I think Hardy. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing, and maybe it's because I was never as invested in them as others, because there are a lot of people that would probably make that influence case on the Hardys very passionate. I just could never bring with it.
Not just influence, but more so as a total package. Because I think if you look at Hardy's run, he was the top star of his companies at different points as well. He kind of had that Sabu style to him as well, where he would flame out a lot and things like that happening for various reasons. But I think that would be an interesting comparison point. But I would put Hayabusa above him as well overall. So, 23.2. It's not looking great right now. But on the other hand, Ishii last year made a huge jump up, again, like 30 points in 1 year. And we saw how that could happen. But he's pretty much the same, like where he was. He was 23 the year before and 23 this year, this past year. So can he at least beat 23% this year will be the question for Hayabusa.
I think there's other people like me that were like just sort of missed him. So it would not shock me if he actually did better.
I think it's possible. I think, like I said, the way this has broken out with Ishii gone, all of the top New Japan guys are gone now, pretty much. Like, it's going to be interesting how that opens up for the non-New Japan candidates this year. CIMA, 23.4% percentage points ahead of Hayabusa last year. What do you think of CIMA's case?
Yeah, I'm going to vote for CIMA as well. Heavily influential style. What the comparison is like, there is a lot of CIMA, like there's a lot of Hayabusa on TV. There's a lot of CIMA on TV too, with all the move sets and the importance of him establishing Toryumon and then Dragon Gate in those early years. People will point to the lack of high-end singles matches, but it doesn't matter because, it shouldn't matter to me because, in that Lucha Risu style, they still prioritize tag and six-mans in ways that other styles of wrestling don't. So I think, it's perfectly fair to include him in even just for the tag work. And I think it's funny to say this because in some ways CIMA's like in the last couple of weeks even he's probably hurt his case among some people. But I'm not gonna let but everything since he left Dragon Gate, I just not gonna let that destroy it unless he like completely messes up. If he drags down the career, if he like destroys other wrestlers' careers, then maybe I would, and maybe you could debate that. He's done that too.
What about Magnum Tokyo?
Well, I was gonna say T-Hawk and Lindemann.
Oh yeah,
dragging them down. You could certainly debate that, I suppose. But ultimately, I just think he's too influential and too great a worker within his own context. And I think he should be recognized. And I think you have to recognize some more of the Lucha Risu guys. That is a huge style that still is. We see it on TV every week in the States. And it's really under recognized in his Hall of Fame.
I wouldn't debate that at all. I do agree with that. They do have Ultimo in. He's kind of like one of the forefathers of that, I suppose. I do like your idea of putting. Huh?
I was gonna say, that's why I also look. If I voted in Mexico, I'd vote for Yamada too.
Yeah, so we all should vote for Hamada in Mexico. But no, I'd like your idea of putting Sasuke on the ballot again, just to see how he holds up after all these years, because, M-Pro's still around to this day.
Just passed the 30th anniversary.
Yep, exactly. I think that's something worth looking at. Yeah. So I think that's another guy. It would be interesting to see how he would fare. And I mean, it's not like his company's like way more successful than Glade or anything, but it's not like there's not as much stink on them. They're running a regional company. They're not blowing money left and right, bringing in all these foreigners and stuff and doing crazy stuff. Even though, like you, Gerard, I do have to admit that I also watch that company to this day. They're very easy to watch, and I like a lot of their wrestlers, even if it's a stupid company. Um, he is very influential, both in terms of the wrestling, also behind the scenes. He was a master guy in Dragon Gate, basically until he left in 2018, and then immediately did stuff with OWE, did stuff with Great. He's got a lot.
OWE isn't his fault. It was a combination of the pandemic and then the difficulties of running in China, plus the difficulties of getting visa for some of those Chinese wrestlers into Japan.
That's why I always appreciate what Middle Kingdom's doing these days to still keep going in China. Like being in the mainland, it's tough, and I know people in the mainland, and it's just an interesting place and something that wrestling has never ever been able to get into. And there's been people that have tried. I remember Evolve tried. Remember when they ran that show in China? On there?
That, yeah, I didn't even know that Evolve ran a show in China.
Yeah, I remember because they were doing like basic spots, and that like the crowd went crazy over them. Like there was a suplex, like a scoop slam and a suplex would get the crowd be like, whoa, and it's like something totally you'd never seen before. I just remember it being awesome on there. But China's really hard to get into overall in terms of wrestling, and I hope that they keep trying and things like that. But definitely see if you could find that Chinese show. I think it was like 10 years ago at this point. It was when Evolve was still around, right? So it had to be 10 years ago. But I remember those China. I'm not making this up. I promise. Out there. But CIMA, very influential, great worker at his peak for sure. I'm not really going to disparage him. It's tough. I mean, he's kind of like a fringe guy to me. Like, is he? I definitely wouldn't put him as like he's solely an in-ring candidate. I would say no to that. But do I think I would check yes on that box? I could probably be convinced of that, but he's a fringe guy. And normally for me personally, if there's a fringe guy, I usually lean no, because to me, I'd rather you be like a definitive yes. Like a fringe guy is almost kind of a no to me. But with him, he's a fringe guy. Like I could see myself voting yes on that for both of them. He's an interesting candidate. I wouldn't put him up there as a draw, like a Hall of Fame draw, but for influence, yeah, he's okay, but he's not a Hall of Fame draw to me.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, I'm very like black and white on that kind of like it's yes or a no, like or a fringe guy, which I guess I'm not that black and white when it comes to this particular candidate. But to me, I would say no to him, and as a Hall of Fame draw. Not that he's bad or anything. Because he meant a lot to DG for sure. I'm not denying that. But when you compare him to Tiger Jeet Singh, and I would say Tiger Jeet Singh is a significantly bigger draw than he is. The other ones I'm on the fringe about, so I don't have a strong feeling on him, to be honest. I think I would put 4 more above him, but I could see myself swapping one out for him, to be honest. What about you? Are you going to vote for him?
I am going to vote for him.
Do you think he'll get in?
I think you could have the same thing with Hayabusa's where
move up some.
Now he'll go up a bit.
Yeah, but I can see that too.
Although maybe not. Like I said, he is not helping his case.
Yeah, like I said, if you look at his recent work, that's kind of bad, And on your show, you did a Voice of Wrestling. You did. Rich, I think, made a great point where he was talking like, well, if you're wrestling for all of these years and nobody actually cares what you're doing for like 5 years straight, that's kind of a black mark against you being a Hall of Famer.
They cared at first because he did, like, again, not any Hall of Fame level, but not businesses.
Strong Hearts did great when they first broke out, like all 3 of them.
Yeah, there's a lot of eyeballs on OWE very early. There's a lot of hype for them when they came into AEW, but pandemic.
Wrestle One, that was like the best stuff Wrestle One ever did. Yeah. Triple A as well.
Where they did a run-in, and then the pandemic happened.
Yeah, that's the thing. The pandemic really shifted a lot of the Strong Heart stuff from what it could have been. And that's true of all three of them. Like Tiak and Lindemann too deserve that credit as much as CIMA does. But that's a good point as well. But it has been a while. Things have definitely taken a hit the recent years. But ultimately, I do think you have to look at his prime period more than the twilight years, so to speak. But anyway, again, I'm kind of on the fringe on CIMA, but I wouldn't hate it, yes or no. Like if you side either way with him. Fujiwara, 29.8%. Do we have to do this again, Gerard? Have you still not learned yet that Fujiwara is a Hall of Famer? No, I'm just kidding. No.
My position is the same.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like I feel like everyone's at a stand. It's like a Mexican standoff. Like we're all standing here.
Nobody has changed the bar in several years now. Absolutely nobody.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's like we're all having these same arguments. To be fair, though, he did have almost a 10% jump last year from 20% to 29.8. So clearly Eric's article made some difference, which I would highly recommend, by the way. I'm going to link both of your Fujiwara articles, yours, which was against Fujiwara in the Hall of Fame, and Eric's articles. Eric is a super smart guy when it comes to shoot star wrestling. I've had tons of great conversations with him, and he knows what he's talking about for sure. He wrote an article in favor of Fujiwara, so I like that Voice of Wrestling posted both articles against each other pretty much on there. With both, it's not like you didn't make good points against George. You did make good points. I personally would vote for Fujiwara for sure. Again, I look at him. And again, we said all we needed to say at this point about him. But I will say, the amount of training he did, the match quality he did was so high. And I think that's really the crux of it. If you don't think Fujiwara is like one of the top wrestlers ever, then I can see why you won't be as impassioned by him. But I think a lot of people do consider him one of the best ever, and I would put him up there as well personally. But I think that's where we split pretty much. And if you don't have that same affinity for his work, I can see why you might go against him, even though I do think his historical significance. And this is my question again, just to wrap my part up on this. I always say we don't know what the future is going to hold, because an argument against him is that the shoot style is dead, right? It's true for the most part, but also his fingerprints are on the works of a lot of different styles and a lot of different people to this day in 2024. And he was a huge part of it, training a lot of all-time legendary people, kind of what we said about Meiko, which we would credit with. But if you look at his list of people he's had a hand in training, it's really strong. And I think that works out in his favor. And my, a last point, again, I will address because it's like a common complaint against him, I hear, is like I heard it, and Dave Meltzer did a great show with Ethan Tyler and John Muse, who are wonderful historians in their own right, and they pretty much said the same thing, where it's like, yeah, Fujiwara, he was a legend and all, but really it was Maeda and Takada that was the one that did it. And now, were Maeda and Takada bigger stars and more influential than Fujiwara? Yes, like no doubt about that. But still, being the third guy to me is a Hall of Fame worthy.
In the Genesis, though, you have to include CIMA as well.
That CIMA as well, yeah, absolutely. CIMA is like a no-brainer legend for every, like every category, pretty much. But people always linked Fujiwara, Takada, and Maeda together for sure, and that's kind of how they broke off. And UWF 2, Fujiwara was a main event guy, and they split off, and his company faced a lot of issues. It was not nearly as successful as. Yeah.
Like I'm not saying there's no case with Fujiwara, but like that Tokyo Dome show really was a success. Absolutely a feather in his cap.
To me, though, here's what I would say about his drawing power. I would not say yes on drawing power for him. My defense of him, he's more like, to me, the guy who he's not the star. He's the guy who worked with the star at his peak. Like that was his greatest role to me. And even in his own company, he often pushed other people ahead of himself, like people like Suzuki and Ken Shamrock and so on, or Wayne Shamrock at the time, and so on and so forth. I think he was best used as a guy, but that's still a vital role, like to be the other guy in that case. And I would say that about imagine if you said that about Tanahashi, Okada, Naito. Oh, I can't vote for Naito because Tanahashi and Okada, they were the ones that really did it. Nobody agrees with that. So I don't know why these standards are held against Fujiwara, for being the third guy. Just because two other all-time legends happen to be there at the same time, I'm not buying that as a mark against Fujiwara. I did want to point that out because I've heard that said multiple times, including by Meltzer, which I don't think is a very fair categorically when you look at what he actually did. And if you want to say his peak was shorter, it was, again, I would say probably 84 to 89, maybe 90 would be his peak as a worker, where he was one of the best in the world. But also, I do think it's fair in the world of the Observer. He's a controversial guy. Like, some people don't think he's one of the greatest wrestlers. Like, I do agree with that. He never won any of the awards or anything like that. So I do understand why he's how he is on there. But I do think some of the points against him, I'm not really buying that much, especially the one about Maeda and Takada. That's not fair to me, and I don't agree with that. Like, you wouldn't say that about other people. But to be fair, that's also what happened with Taue as well. The other three were so big, so Taue doesn't count. That was ridiculous. Taue should have been in the Hall of Fame all along. That's another tangent we don't need to go on. But he did jump up. Do you sense any hope for a groundswell for him this year? Like, could he jump up more?
Look, given the passions aroused in this debate, I think that he's going to have some people. He'll bleed out slowly, basically. Right?
Yeah. Well, he did make a good jump. I mean, I was a little surprised, to be honest, that he did take a 10% leap up. I could see him again. I think the category weakening a little bit and thinning out could help him. But I do think if you're a modern voter, I think he doesn't appeal to you that much. Again, we've talked about him a lot already, and read the articles. They lay it out pretty good themselves, for and against. Final person, Shingo Takagi, 41.7% last year. It really kind of feels like this is his year, is kind of how I feel like, but what do you think?
Look, he's many people's number one on this in the Japan region. He's my number two because I'm such a devoted Singh voter. But yeah, it's his time, and I think he's to answer all of your questions. Yeah, I think he's going to do it, and I'm going to vote for him.
Yeah, I think it's his year. It feels like it. Like, he has the chance to make a similar jump up to Ishii. It's not as dramatic as Ishii's last year, but it feels like it's his time on this ballot, to where now it's thinned out enough to where he's going to get the nod. I'd be pretty surprised if he didn't get in, to be honest.
Yeah.
I really don't have any debate against him. I'm probably not as high on him as some people. I know, we've heard people. Before you came on, Case was on the show for the Hall of Fame, and he said he was the greatest wrestler of all time, like the number one in ring, which would obviously make him a slam dunk Hall of Famer. I don't really agree with that, to be honest, but I do think he has a great track record with great longevity. And when he was the top dog in Dragon Gate, especially as a heel, in Berserk, was really his peak in Dragon Gate. That was an incredible run. Like there's no doubt about it. That was like Wrestler of the Year level. I don't know if I would put him as an MVP player in most of his other years outside of that couple of year period in Berserk, to be honest. Even when he won the title in New Japan, it was such a fluke situation. Like, it's incredible that it happened, like how it did. And it did happen. But that title run was not anything. It was not any kind of legendary title run by any means. It's just the fact that it happened is what everyone would point to, more so than what actually happened in it. Although his match against Tanahashi at the Dome, which was like one of the worst Dome shows ever in the middle of the pandemic, not his fault at all. But that match itself was an incredible match with Tanahashi as well. So as a worker, I definitely think there's a strong case for him. The rest, I think the voters are going to push him over the top for that. But I don't know. Like, he doesn't win my heart over the way he does a lot of people. But even though I still love him a lot, again, I'm not against him at all. I just think we're comparing him to the all-time great legends, and that's where he falls a little short in my opinion. But I don't think it's going to matter.
There's a lot of people that would put him either number one or in their top 10 of workers.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't really feel that way about him. But I mean, he'd be in the top tier. He'd be definitely on the list somewhere. Like, let's put it that way. Like, it's a yes vote, but I wouldn't put him as a voter exclusive, or an in-ring exclusive candidate. I wouldn't put him at the top 10 of all time or anything like that. But I know some people do. I know a lot of people do, and I do think he's going to win out in the end. Even though I'm a little skeptical of him, I think he'll get in, and I would probably say yes, to be honest. Anyway, I would probably vote for it too, to be honest. To me, I would put Singh ahead of him. Yeah.
Most people would put, or a lot of people anyway. I've seen her like, yeah, Shingo's the strongest in Japan.
Here's another thing to kind of bring back something I've said multiple times now. I'm not in favor of voting against any active candidate as well. So that like automatically kind of disqualifies me from that, because I just don't think it's right. Even with Shingo, same thing with Zack. Shingo, it's totally plausible he could get another main event push or do some or have great matches and add more years on his run and make him an even more legendary worker. And I think we're just voting for him, and his story has not been told fully yet, in my opinion. I think there's more to tell with him. But I don't think it's going to matter. I think he's going to get in this year, to be honest. But I would still say, obviously, like Fujiwara again, we're on that we're in that standoff scenario. I passionately defended Takayama earlier, and I would say that, and I also would say Hayabusa would be my guy as well for the legacy and influence category. So yeah, overall, you've got Singh, Hayabusa, CIMA, and Shingo as yours.
Singh, Hayabusa, Singh, Hayabusa, CIMA, and Shingo is exactly.
Okay, yeah. See, so we half agree. It's that Fujiwara, that pesky Fujiwara, that takes us out on there. The rest of the ballot, again, we can kind of go through it briefly on some things here. We don't have to go person by person, just kind of give an overview of things. Let's start in the biggest category, which is historical. You get 7 votes here. Last year, Raka Perez, Sergeant Slaughter, the Briscoes all got in, so that clears out some space. They added the Wild Samoans in. That's kind of like a death bump test, I feel like, there. Last year, the top guys were the British Bulldogs, Johnny Rougeau, and JYD were the top 3. Von Erichs and June Byers handing out the top 5 as well. What's your take on this region? Do you have any strong thoughts on anybody in particular? Because I think there's to me, there's one person I think should 1,000,000% be in. 2, I would say, that I think should for sure be in. And then there's a lot you can kind of go back and forth on. But what's your overall take on the historical class?
This is probably the second most crowded region of the ballot. I think that obviously there's been some movement now, which is good. And so I think there's some pathways for some people that might have been blocked in the past and not doing so well. I mean, I don't. There's only one tag team on here that I'm voting for, and I can't bring myself to vote for any of the other ones. And also, I should just mention, I don't think Ole Anderson's ever getting in because none of the retired wrestlers.
They all hate him so much.
So there's no point to me in that one. Yeah, I mean.
Do you think it would be better if he was in the tag team? Like that was the category?
That might be. I'm sure Dave will do that eventually.
Yeah.
That would be funny, but that fits in sort of the way that things go, where someone doesn't get in because I don't think there's definitely for men of a certain age, there's definitely yeah, Arn Anderson on their own. No, I wouldn't. I don't think he is, but I think you put the Andersons on there.
What do you think of when you look at the candidates, were the Bulldogs the team you're going to vote for?
No.
Oh, okay. Who you got?
Mad Dog and Butcher Vachon.
I would vote for them too. Why are they so underrated? They got 10.5% last year. If you look at their record, I mean, they were huge stars in their region.
They peaked in the late 60s.
Wow. That's the problem with this whole category. You could point to that 5 different people that you could say that exact same thing about.
Well, same thing with Johnny Rougeau.
He should be in. He was one of the ones I mentioned. If you look at Pat LaPron's research on him, there's no way you could tell me he's not a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. Do you have any hopes for the Samoans coming in? Do you think the death bump will help them?
They'll probably get something respectable, but I don't think they're going to go in.
What about the Von Erichs? With all the talk around the movie that came out, do you think that's going to lead to anything?
Because I think strangely enough, they'll always get votes, but I think there's been also increased scrutiny just to see like how short it really was and how this, and the way that this is listed as the three of them like this doesn't really fit.
Yeah, that's another good point.
Short.
I feel like we talked about that last year, like about them. Like, why are they listed like this? Yeah.
But, it's weird because like, it was a very big and influential moment, but
yeah, like everybody knows about that. And again, I mean, they had a whole movie about their lives, but it wasn't like the movie wasn't exactly a glowing like this thing like, oh, they were these legends. It's like how troubled they were in life. Was more about that than their legendary run as wrestlers. So it's interesting. It's an interesting case. I know, like Fredo Esparza swears by the Von Erichs. Like anybody from Texas, you can guarantee will vote for the Von Erichs that's voting in.
Well, Dave was there actually. He was working in Texas, but this is why he still says that it's very short though. Yeah,
that's true. There and there's a lot of different people on here. It's hard to compare all of these eras even as they are. And like, somebody like a Steamboat and Youngblood, they're kind of like a poor man's version of Toyota and Yamada to me. Like they didn't
very big, very, very short.
Exactly. Like amazing workers, like such a great team. It's unfortunate with Jay how things happened with him. I wish that he could have like lived a cleaner life and they could have had a great run. And he especially could have been a way bigger star than he was. Steamboat, obviously, we know is one of the best like ever. But that's a team I would look at. Sputnik, I always say, I'm from Memphis as well, so we have to take what Dylan says with a grain of salt, perhaps, much like Fredo on the Von Erichs.
No, but I think last year you went over Sputnik very well.
Yeah. I listened to last year on him. I still think he should be in. And I mean, let's be fair. Somebody's got to get credit for segregating wrestling. Eventually, like at first, we have to get in there. And he was a big part of it legitimately. And again, you can listen to last year's and I go through all that. Yeah. But for me, if I were to vote in this for 7 people, I would for sure vote Rougeau and JYD. Like the dog should be in. Like, sorry, Dave, on that one.
Yeah. I agree. I'm voting for JYD.
Yeah. What do you think of Byers? Like, we're kind of in that same kind of spot we always are with her.
I'm voting for her.
Me too. I would too.
I think there's enough at that time, because people construct. Well, I guess we'll get to her later, but people construct all these arguments about why Becky Lynch should be in, based on her star power for an incredibly short amount of time, and it fell flat on its face after that WrestleMania.
Yeah, I mean that was like the ultimate flash in the pan, like Becky's run on top.
Byers had maybe not as big as Mildred Burke, but definitely had a few years there as a top woman.
Yeah, it was literally like, we'll talk about Becky before, but yeah, definitely if you compare the two, Byers has a much greater version, I would say. I would vote for her as well. She would be in my top 3. Vachon's we went over. They should definitely be into me. I really think they need to do more research, some of these voters.
It's funny because I think I'm only going to vote for 5 people.
So you would cut it off at those. Rougeau, Dog, Byers, Vachon, and...
Byers, Wild Bull Curry.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I think so too. Like I said, I think I would go for that as well. Like I said, while I would definitely vote for Curry above like Cowboy, like Bob Ellis of the same region, kind of. Firpo was a guy I thought was really interesting when I was doing research. I compared Firpo.
He is, and there's some influence there. I think you can argue in longevity.
Yeah, especially with the Macho Man taking his promo style from him pretty directly, I would say. If you look at some of Firpo's old promos, everybody points to the catchphrase, but actually his cadence was very similar as well. If you look at some of his promos, and he's another guy, much like we talked about with Singh, Firpo, he was all over the place as a headliner. Like he main evented in Hawaii, to the Northeast, Detroit. That was probably his best run was in Detroit. The guys he was running with were Sheik and Bobo, and they were day one inductees. Again, it's kind of what I said about Fujiwara. He was there too. He still counts. You can't just say, oh, well, they did it all. He was a huge star in Detroit as well. Especially which, by the way, being 5'8", you know, he still was able to play his character so well and be such a threat that he was able to beat this main event guy in all of these different regions. That some of which are underreported on, like Hawaii, for example, but still multiple gimmicks. Short guy in an era where that would be a big hindrance to him. He still made it work. Was always a headliner.
I would argue he sort of like he was still before like there were worse eras to be short than his.
Yeah, I suppose so. I guess if he was like 20 years old, like, younger, like that would be a really hard, like in the 80s or whatever. So he kind of got out before things got really crazy, but he was still a shorter guy. And I think that still counts that he was able to overcome that. Again, I look at his run in Detroit. He was a huge star there, had titles all over the place, was a big star in the middle of America. He's a guy that I think is really underrated at only at 13.7%. I would vote for Firpo as well, actually.
I'm considering it, but that's my 5 right now. I'm settled on.
Okay, let's see if you lean my way at the end with Firpo there. But I agree with all your other ones. I also would throw in Sputnik as well, like for the same reasons as well. So I would go with the full 7. But after that, yeah, it's not a super strong region. I also would say Mongolian Stomper is a little underrated, 10.2. He's a guy, very talented guy, very important towards middle America, again, Kansas, Memphis, all these places. And the Memphis run was probably his best run, not even just in Canada. Everyone thinks about him as this Canadian guy. But that was a really great run for him. So Mongolian Stomper, somebody I would look at as well. I probably wouldn't put him ahead of Firpo, but the other ones I agree with you on. And Sputnik, I think historical is way up for me. Modern, once again, 7 people to vote in. A ton of new people coming in this year. So we've gotten Trish Stratus survived after all the talk about her being one of the worst candidates. She proved that she is better than Charlotte Flair at least. 11.4, so she's on the ballot once again. And by the way, I really liked her feud with Becky last year. I thought she did a great job in there on the mic, and their matches were hard-hitting and very impactful. 11.4 for Trish. Moxley only at 13%. Definitely not the most popular, but better than Seth, so there's that. The Hardy Boys, we talked about them earlier, 18.4. Becky Lynch, 22.9. Bill Goldberg, 23.5. The Steiners, 25. Took a huge drop, by the way. They were in the 50s the year prior. I think we know why. Yeah. Someone said some stupid bullshit and got it in major trouble, and that probably caused some people to turn against them.
For that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I didn't even vote for them before that. I just didn't think there was that there.
Yeah, but a lot of people turned on him last year because of Rick Strider's nonsensical comments that he made. Edge, 30.7. Randy Orton, 31.3. Briscoe Boys, 37.8. A nice run for basically an all indie team last year. Like at that point, they had never really had a major run on TV together, and still 38%. Not bad for them. CM Punk at 44. Roman Reigns, 52.4. Young Bucks 55.1. That was another controversial thing. That was a lot of people talked about them not making it last year. And Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff 55.4. New people coming in: the Usos or coming back. Sid Vicious, Samoa Joe, Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, Cody Rhodes, Bray Wyatt, and Asuka/Kana. So this is a weird ass region. Like once again, this is another one where you're like, man, we're comparing, Becky Lynch versus Paul Orndorff. And it's like, huh, like that kind of thing here. But a lot of interesting votes here. Do you have any thoughts on this region overall?
Oh, this is gonna come up with some very, very crazy results that I think are gonna say about people's beliefs and tribalism and everything like that.
Oh, get ready for that. Yeah, get ready for that. They hit it at like how things are going. Yeah, absolutely agree on that.
We had the AEW TV deal since then.
Yep.
Which is a big thing.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Do you have who do you kind of look at as the strongest?
Well, I was going to ask you, do you have anything on? Can you make a case for Asuka/Kana?
Yeah, with her, in ring wise, I think she's great. She's been great for a long time. She was at the start of her career, she was trained in A to Z. she developed a very hard-hitting style and was kind of one of the, not innovators, obviously, but more so she carried the torch from like a Hota-level person through the Dark Ages. The problem with her run is she basically got out of Joshi right before it got up again, like started to grow. And so her entire run, much like Meiko in the Joshi scene, was all in the Dark Ages. As a worker, she was fantastic. And she was really the Japanese star that broke through to the WWE. More than Kairi and more than Io, Asuka was the one that became a big time like main event player as a woman in WWE as a Japanese player. So I think that does count for something historically. You know, she kind of, I don't want to say she like kicked the door open for the ones that came later, but she was the one that unlocked it. And, you know, to where they could get in, even people like Sare and whatnot coming in there. So it's like,
Wow.
you know, it's just, well, that's what I'm saying. Like, how much does that mean to you on a Hall of Fame scale? Because I don't know if that's Hall of Fame worthy that you open the door for a couple of people to be successful after you. But in ring wise, I would say yes, she's a Hall of Fame level worker. And she has been for a long time. Again, it feels like that style that I mentioned, you know, she was one of the main people in Queen Bee, which was Battle Arts' women's side project. I will give more anecdotal evidence, much like I did with Sputnik last year, of a personal thing that happened. My very first article I ever wrote on Pro Res Spirit, this was like, God, a million years ago. Now it's but maybe more like 12. My very first article was on Yuki Ishikawa, like the Battle Arts man. So he found it on Facebook and messaged me actually about it and praised me, and it was one of the coolest things that ever happened to me. Like, he praised me as a person, writer, wrestler, all that stuff. And it was so freaking awesome. We got to talking, and the main thing he wanted to talk about was how Kana was like his best student and how great she was. And how proud he was of her to be in WWE. So if he says she's one of the best ever, then that goes a long way with me. Like, he said it directly to me. Yeah, he's a top 10 worker of all time. If he were on this ballot, I would vote for him. I promise you that. I don't think he'll ever be, because Battle Arts was not as big as some other companies. But still, when he said that to me, that meant a lot in terms of what I thought about Kana or Asuka. She had an amazing feud with Arisa Nakajima, another legendary person that retired, and I miss her so much to this day. That's somebody else I would love to see get a shot, just for, because I don't think she would make it, but I think it would inspire people to look at her old matches and what she did, and it would grow in that way. Asuka did a lot of stuff. She was one of the main people that traveled to America back in, again, the dark days for the Shimmer, Chikara, all that stuff when they were bringing in Joshi wrestlers. She was big in that scene, had a lot of great matches against people like Yamada at the time, Sarah Del Rey at the time, you know, Cheerleader Melissa, all those people she had great matches with. WWE run has been great. I don't think they've gotten all out of it that they could have. But if you had told me her run would be what it is 10 years ago when she signed, because when she signed, I would have thought, she's not going to get anywhere. But it's actually turned out to be extremely successful for when you compare it to that and other people. So I probably wouldn't vote for her, but I wouldn't hate you if you did either. She's another fringe candidate to me, but I wouldn't push.
I was going to ask though. I understand you can make historical significance Japanese WWE.
Yeah,
but there's not world class high end work necessarily though.
Yeah, I wonder what her best match in WWE would be.
Probably in the NXT.
Yeah, her highest rated match. Let me go on Cage Match. See what we got here. Where she would stack up. Okay, so Asuka's top rated WWE match was against Ember Moon. That was in 2017. Okay. Yeah, in Brooklyn 3. That was kind of the sequel to Bayley and Sasha. That did get 4.5 stars from the Observer. You know, she's had some good matches in WWE, and she's been a strong candidate for sure. I wouldn't put her, and I mean her match versus, like, they've never actually gave her and Io a proper like big match against each other too, which I think is missing. Or even her and Kairi have never had a big singles match. which I think would have a lot of storyline inclinations that, and maybe they'll get there one day. But like I said, I worry about her injury history right now. So I don't know if she'll ever be able to get there. But yeah, WWE wise, the high end work is not there. But outside of WWE, before she went there, and you got to remember too, a lot of her show stuff that she worked before was her own produce shows. She wasn't really affiliated with any company.
Well, yes, because a certain company was created to.
Yes, that is what she told us on Twitter for sure. The funny thing about that is so funny because really that all started with Nanae, not Razi Ogawa, because of an incident that they had when they were in the same group together that led to a shoot fight backstage, which, I've heard some things about, and Nanae looks really good in those stories. Like, it looked like she might have come out on top in that fight.
Interesting.
Yeah, like I said,
but I wouldn't shock me. Like, I could see either of them win that. Not shocked.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, both of them are definitely legit, but you gotta understand, Kana is a shitstirrer by her personality. Like, if you know anything about her run in Japan, she likes, even what she said on Twitter. There was actually no point to her saying that other than to just rile people up, pretty much. It had nothing to do with anything she was doing at the time, but it was just fun. Like, so I like Asuka's personality as well, Kana's personality as well. But I hope she gets back soon. She's a fantastic wrestler. I would say yes as a Hall of Famer if you count her non-WWE work as well. The rest, it's kind of in the eye of the beholder. But as a draw, definitely no. I don't think you could say that just because of where she was at. But influence, I think we'll have to wait and see. Let's give it 10 years and see what happens after that, because it would all have really started with her if this does lead to an explosion of Joshi wrestlers that go to WWE. Like I said, she's the one that opened that door, but it just hasn't happened yet in any way that's Hall of Fame level, even though I like Io and Ikari a lot, obviously. But anyway, who would you vote for in this region?
Okay, so I got my 7, and so I got Mark and Jay Briscoe, the Young Bucks, Bill Goldberg, Jon Moxley, Paul Orndorff, CM Punk, and Cody Rhodes.
Well, unfortunately, because you said you would vote for CM Punk, I have to end the show now. No.
Well, look, he's done the business in WWE.
Yeah, he has. In all honesty,
Also, Cody and the Bucks, in part because of the AEW television deal, and for Cody in part because of this current run. Mox, again, I think he was there. I mean, he wasn't there right at the very beginning, but he was there by May of 2019 at Double or Nothing. And, he's doing whatever. I don't really watch AEW anymore, but everyone's raving about the current Mox. But I think he has done enough to deserve to get in. Goldberg, I think his return in 2016, 2017 actually puts him over the top.
Agreed.
If you go and you look at those numbers, he's an incredible draw in the territories and WWF. And look, Mark and Jay, I actually didn't vote for them last year, but the more I thought about it and went back and watched stuff, I'm like, yeah, you know what? They're one of the greatest tag teams in the last 20 years. No question. Just from pure work wise. And but I guess here's the thing though. I consider not voting for them and voting for Samoa Joe, but I had to go with the Briscoes in the end.
Yeah, I think the Briscoes are a stronger candidate than Joe. Joe's another one of these guys, like these acts that are like, if you just look at his peak, it's so high, like he feels like the guy based on that, but then you realize it was so short, There
were some sort of gaps in there.
Yeah, like he had literally 10 years of being literally irrelevant, pretty much, and the best you could come up with was that angle in WWE where he broke into AJ Styles' house. That was not a Hall of Fame run, my friend, on that end. I think the best
he did. I think he did better in that company than people.
I think the best thing he did was that Brock feud. Like, that was the one time I felt like he really felt like a main event player, and they totally fumbled it and messed it up. In my opinion. What do you think was good about his WWE run? Like, what's your argument for him?
Oh, just he did better than people expected. And his NXT stuff wasn't bad. Or his first NXT stuff.
Well, even then, even the AEW run, to me, AEW and NXT, he's okay. Like, that's where I look at him. Like, oh, okay.
He's a top. What would you rank him in the best promos of the last 20 years?
fantastic promo. Like I said, they're like one of the best talkers on TV, actually. Like now you mentioned it, the promo work is amazing. The in-ring work, I don't think he has it, unless he's working with a very particular type of wrestler, like a Darby Allin, like now type of guy. Like I don't remember any of his matches really in WWE being that special. Like even the Brock feud, like the Brock feud was mainly his promos and his aura.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. But the Ring of Honor run was amazing. Like that was an all-time great run. The start of his TNA run was also epic. So that's a good 4 years, I would say. Like let's put him
the best run in that company ever.
Yeah, exactly. 03 to 07, let's say. Joe was awesome. Like one of the best in the world. After that, you had the stuff with the pants and the face tattoo and the kidnappings and everything went to hell in TNA. Like let's just be honest. After that, and then again, like until that Brock feud, the NXT run really didn't move me that much. I have to say, like in terms of his work, his promos spectacular for sure, and he proved. Listen, that MJF Adam Cole crap last year, like was a company killer for me. Like
sort of.
Yeah, exactly. He was able to save it and pull it back through his great work on the mic. And like I said, if you put him in the right scenario against the right player, like a Swerve or a Darby, he can be great. But I personally don't think he's a Hall of Fame caliber player. There's too much dead periods in his career for me to look at compared to the Briscoes, who are always great. Like whenever they teamed, pretty much. The only argument I would say against them is when Jay went off as a singles guy, and that kind of took away from the tag run. But I would still vote for him. What do you think about Sami Zayn? He's the most interesting new guy to me.
There's a lot of years where he didn't do anything.
Yeah, I mean that's true, and I mean that heel run. Yeah.
And it's also you're also basing it off of the bloodline thing, but he hasn't really done that much since either.
Yeah.
And then his work prior to WWE. Obviously.
Yeah, he's another guy. Like you look at his pre-WWE stuff, and he was incredible, like one of the best. Yeah. His NXT run was very strong, I would say.
Yep.
Like he was a great babyface, and then they turned him heel on TV when they brought him up to the main roster, and I thought that good 3 years or so was either not doing anything or was actively bad, like what he was doing.
He got injured like almost as soon as he got called to the main roster.
Yeah, that's true as well. He did have the injury, and remember when he was cutting the promos every week? Remember when they did the thing where he brought up AEW on Raw and like got a super heat for it? Yeah. He was just trying everything to get heel heat, and it's just like, man, you are so miscast in this angle. And they successfully pivoted him to the bloodline thing where he was technically a heel, but really a babyface, like in reality, and everyone loved him. And he basically saved the storyline.
Mostly have done nothing since.
The tag run with Kevin Owens led to a great moment where they won the belts at WrestleMania. That was like one of the few well-booked things that company's done. The run after, they wrestle good. And again, if you look at his run, he wrestles good, but it's not Hall of Fame level. Like, I mean, did you see his match with Gunther this year at WrestleMania? Like the title match, the IC title match.
No.
And I thought that was a great match. Like that to me was the best match on WrestleMania weekend this year. I know some people will go with the sports entertainment stuff, but I thought that was the best match. His run since has been good. I would not say great overall. And I still wish Gable had won the belt in the first place. But no, but I think if you look at what he meant to the Bloodline feud, he has the Generico run. He's had spurts of good stuff. To me, I think there's a case for him. I'm not saying he's a slam dunker, but he's a fringe guy. And I think a lot of these guys that came up now would be like automatic no to me. And I thought he was the most interesting one. It's hard to...
How many years would you say that? Well, this is basically an El Generico question, not a Sami Zayn question.
Yeah, yeah.
Was one of the best workers on the planet.
Oh, that's a tough one. For in-ring style, I would say, when did he really get going? I would say probably around 05, 06 ish. I would say. Because he was doing the PWG stuff as well, along with the Ring of Honor. He really took off at PWG before Ring of Honor, more than anything. Definitely by 07, when they were fully entrenched with Ring of Honor, Steenerico and all that. That had to be for sure. He was one of the best. So I would say 07 to maybe 2012 would be it.
Super long run.
Yeah, that's true. You're right about that. Maybe briefly in 2013, but let's say 2012. Like the end of 2012 is kind of like the end of the Generico run. After that, I think he was one of the best baby faces in NXT. But I wouldn't say he was like, if you look at his match quality list, if you were just purely breaking down his match list, he would never be like an MVP Wrestler of the Year level player again in WWE to me, in terms of worldwide. But I do think for a character work for the Bloodline stuff, he has to be considered one of the company MVPs for that 2 or 3 year period.
That long?
Well, maybe the Bloodline lasted forever. It's still going on now.
No, I know, but how long was his part in it, though?
It had to be at least a year or two. Let's see. When was the match against Roman? That was like February of last year, right?
February 2023, I think.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, like let's say a year. Let's be conservative. Let's say a year-long run in Bloodline. But he was still an MVP player even then, even with his body being what it is and him being lesser so. So I think that counts too. Yeah, it's tough. Like that is a pretty long gap in between. That's like a 10-year gap of not being one of the best guys there. Even though I liked his NXT run very well, it's tough. I don't know. Like I said, he's a fringe guy to me. But still, what about of these new guys? Is there anybody else besides Cody that you would vote for?
New guys. Sorry, Sid. No.
Yes. We talked about Joe. We talked about Sammy. What about KO? Steen/Owens.
A lot of the similar stuff to Zayn.
Yeah.
He's never peaked as high in WWE.
Yeah, I think he's like Sammy, except worse in every way, pretty much.
Well, the Austin thing was pretty big.
That was really
that didn't go on as long as the Bloodline.
No, that was like a month, and it was awesome. It led to an epic moment that everyone loved, including my grandparents. Both went crazy at that match. to be fair, so that was good. But like I said, I mean, he's good. Again, he's not bad, but it's not like he's a Hall of Fame level guy in WWE, in my opinion, at all. And there were years where I thought he was bad.
You thought Generico was a better worker than Steen on the Indies, right?
Yeah, I think so. But it's closer then. Well, when he turned heel on Generico, Steen was an awesome, like that run was excellent up to their match, like their big final battle match. That was one of the better, well done indie feuds that I can remember, to be honest. He was great then. It was close then, to be honest. But again, that was very brief. Then remember when they went to the Scum stuff and all of that? That stuff sucked. And he was feuding with Jim Cornette. That sucked.
That was killing him.
Yeah. I think overall I would definitely take Generico/Sammy over Steen. But he did have high peaks where he's at that level for sure. Usos, do you have any thought on them?
No.
Yeah, I agree.
that is I will say that the WWE hype machine is pretty impressive to get them on the ballot.
Yeah, I agree. Like, it's a WWE thing. If anything, like, Jay's popularity as a singles wrestler is bigger now than they ever were as a team, like, at the moment. And obviously not a great worker, like, by our standards, I would presume, but still, I wouldn't vote for them, long story short. Do you think Moxley takes a jump up from 13%?
Oh, yeah. Especially because he's champion again.
Yeah. I haven't loved the way they've handled this storyline, to be honest, so far, but we're still very early, so we'll see what they do.
A lot of people love it, so I think it's going to happen. I guess I'll just mention a little more on Becky Lynch because we started.
Oh, yeah.
It was way too fast, and she fell hard.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be honest, until maybe the last year, I never thought she was a particularly good worker at all.
I agree.
I will say, though, everything since But I think she's rebuilding. I will just say this: I'm not going to vote for her, probably not soon. But she's sort of rebuilding her case, like when she did that NXT run with
That was great.
Tiffy or whatever.
Tiffany Stratton.
Yeah. So that felt like she's like actually a really talented star. So if she comes back and continues on that trajectory, I could see it in the future, but not now.
And did also help in ratings, like directly attributed to a ratings bump when she went to NXT.
She was a bigger ratings draw on NXT than a lot of others main roster.
Yeah, even CM Punk for the record. I just want to.
Was it Charlotte 9000 or something?
Oh yeah, with Charlotte. Yeah, Charlotte was a non-factor. Like her and Edge were like negative draws on TV.
Well, should we? Edge sort of had a. Look, I would say this. I think he redeemed himself a bit, but not enough for me.
Yeah, not as much as you would have wanted him to redeem himself.
Yeah. So I'm still not anywhere close to voting for him.
No. Him and Orton are kind of the same to me. It's like they've been around a long time. That's it. Like that's what I think of them in terms of positives. Like they've been around a long time and they've wrestled a lot of matches. But that's it. Like I don't think anything of them as workers, to be honest. And I think Edge did do better. And hey, he tried. I think both of them this past year, Orton, since he came back from the injury, the fans love him so much. It's made these guys try harder, at least, than what they were doing in the past. But that doesn't mean I think they're Hall of Fame level workers.
I think Edge deserves credit for understanding he needs to change things up, change the company.
Yeah, I do agree with that too. And again, he seems like a really pretty good dude, to be honest with you. Like he's got a good mindset, like very positive. Type of guy, good for the locker room. I don't think he's any kind of difference maker to a roster at this point or ever in his life.
I think even Dave has come to realize that Edge is hard as he used to.
Yeah, he used to love Edge and Orton both. He still likes Orton though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Last one here, Roman Reigns.
Another year or two. I need to see his run as a face, and then it's inevitable. You can't not give him the business.
It's one of those disconnect things because the fans love him as a face. And I think he kind of isn't that good, actually. Still.
It's okay. Like I said, if he draws for an extended period as a face, then I'll vote.
Well, yeah, he's doing that. Like you said, so far the returns are good for him, and like you said, we still probably could have more time in that. But so far things are looking good in his way that they finally overcome. And even the voice, in the Voice of the Wrestling, they said that he looks like he might be they might have finally overcome, and they railed against him for years as an anti-draw, and not unjustifiably so at all. I think as a worker, I actually used to like him as a early, when everyone else hated him as a babyface. I thought he had good matches constantly. The heel turn, I think he's unbearable, with the his style of wrestling.
Sure. And it's regressed. Yeah. It's actually probably going to have to do long-term harm. Especially and
I think that's everyone's fear, that this could be where everyone's going.
You might be able to get out of voting for him by claiming negative historical.
But that could be a thing for the voters. I think I would consider it. And Dave himself said that Reigns is one of the top, the strongest candidates on the ballot. So I think he's going to get in. I think both Roman and the Bucks are getting in this year, and I think Punk will get in too. Cody's going to be interesting. It's his first year on the ballot. I mean, he's at such a hot run, and his return to WWE directly coincided with it, basically a big jump up as much as the bloodline. He also deserves credit for that. And what you said is also accurate about him being vital to AEW's existence. But I know some people really hate him, hate his work and think he's really not, a disingenuous babyface. Wow. But yeah, I mean, I don't care about that. I'm with you. I think he's probably worth a look, to be honest. He's another one that I think you could argue, okay, this is only a few years. We could still have a good few years after it. Let's see how he does for another 3 years as the top star. And also, his title run is not well received either because it's been booked pitifully poor, to be fair, feuding with Solo, of all people.
Well, we're also forgetting what we've already mentioned about the AEW TV.
Yeah.
Of that company. I'm not just voting for him because of the last year.
Yeah, no, you're right about that, like for sure. But I could see why some people might say I need to see him more, like see more from him.
I can get that, yeah.
And that TV deal happened after he left, like years as well.
No, I know, but he did lay the groundwork for that.
Yeah, I know, I agree with you. Like I'm more on your side, but I could see why some people would be against him. Or not even against him. I think I can see why people might want to wait a couple of years because like I said, I still say how I always am. I wish that we were taught. If this were a 45-year age minimum, we wouldn't have to worry about this because we would already have all of these answers when they come on to the ballot. But that's just my opinion. Once again, yeah, I would definitely vote for Mr. Wonderful. To me, there's like no doubt. The only problem is he's in the wrong category. He should be in the historical. And he would get in for sure.
Well, not technically, because I think he wrestled in 1995.
That is true. Like by the letter of the law, he is, but I still don't like that we're judging him against Becky, like overall, and all these other people. But he should be in. I would vote for him for sure. The Briscoes, 100%. Goldberg, totally agree. Like cannot have the history of wrestling without Goldberg. And they even got a huge pop like a couple of weeks ago. Like they're already building to a big match with him and Gunther. Perhaps that could be something. We're not saying that would be good, but it's Gunther, so it may very well be good anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean, if anyone can get something out of him, it's him.
He's going to be an interesting candidate when he gets on, like, when they put him on. I think if you compare his... Yeah.
He's drawing, and he's also got a huge body of work, and he was one of the best in the world for many years. And you could still say that even.
Yeah, even in WWE, he's the one guy that's been able to be a legit, like, Wrestler of the Year candidate, even in WWE. And he deserves a ton of credit for that. So I put those three in for sure. Orndorff, Briscoes, Goldberg. Then you've got a mismatch of a lot of people. I think I would probably go with Roman now if I had to. It's Sammy, but I feel guilty about it. It just doesn't feel right voting for these new guys to me. And like honestly, like with all due respect, no joking around right now. Punk deserves credit for being a massive draw in WWE since he's returned. Like he's done a great job of being a guy for WWE. Now,
it was a little shaky at first, but he has gotten it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people say, I like this match. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think I like it as much as WWE fans. Certain ones, that cage match or Hell in a Cell with him and Drew, a lot of people say was the best match in WWE this year. So he's doing good stuff there. I give him his credit, even though he's still a jerk, like overall. And the AEW stuff, I don't think you can completely just downgrade that, like how messy that was. I think you could argue that still had negative impacts to this day, the company. Yeah. But still, like if you're being fair, you cannot discredit what he's done in WWE so far. He's had a really good run. Like you said, started off, especially that first night, that first promo or whatever he did on Raw, that was really shaky. But since then, he's found his footing, and they've done the best they could, even feuding over a bracelet overall. He's good. I think he's going to get in all honesty, even if I don't like him. Rest of the world, briefly, Big Daddy's done. Like he's out after last year only getting 45%. The end of those debates for now until Dave puts them on like in a couple of years again. I really want that to happen just to see the reaction online for Big Daddy to come back. Jackie Paolo also out, who was a good candidate, by the way. But he's out. Best percentages last year, Jose Torres from Spain, 45.6. Johnny Saint, 44.4. The Royal Brothers, 34.4. Adrian Street, 33.1. Spiros Arion, 29.4. Dominic DeNucci, 28.8. Otto Vons, 28.1. Kendo Nagasaki, 27.5. Billy Joyce, 23.4. Killer Carl Cox, 17.5. And coming back to the ballot, George Gordienko from all over the world, but Greek by determination. And last year, George Kidd from Scotland made it in as well. Another weird ballot comparing all these different people. Do you have any thoughts on this? Since you are voting, like who's kind of the ones you're pointing to that like, oh yeah, this guy needs to be in?
Well, so I'm not going to vote for him, but I think there's definitely something there for Spiros Arion.
Yeah, me too.
because he's got a lot of drawing all around the world. But I'm going to go with Gordienko, Taras, and Otto Vons. And Gordienko, huge draw all over the world except for the United States. Jose Taras, absolutely massive draw in Europe. And look, I got to say, I feel like Otto Vons gets a bit of a short shift in this, and that's why I'm going to keep voting for him.
I do agree. He
was around a long time and was the premier wrestling promotion in Europe,
right?
And was a big star. He wasn't generally good, but he did have some good matches.
Influential, had star power, and had great longevity. Totally agree with you. There was that era for a while there, like 5 to 10 years, where it was like super negative Otto Vons discourse. But I think that's coming around. He did make a jump up last year to 28%. So it seems like people are coming around on him a little bit. To me, we're 2 out of 3 the same. Like Taras is like a no-brainer. Like if you've read the work of the great Phil Lyons, you realize how important he was to Spain and what a huge success he was. Gordienko, I also agree with that. Like he deserves it. Been all over the place. Arion was close. He was I really debated like 3 or 4 different people here in this region for the third. To me, I think the Royal Brothers, if you've seen their wrestling, they were just awesome wrestlers in ring, like some of the best stuff out of Europe at the time. And they really deserve a lot of love. Vic and Bert Faulkner, they were an amazing tag team. Would highly recommend everyone check them out if you can and look into them a little bit more. They had a good run, not great. Do you have any kind of vibe about who could advance now? Like Big Daddy's out, that's going to change. Like this category is going to change in terms of voting now that Big Daddy's out. I would say.
I think Taras could get in.
I think he will. I'd be surprised if he doesn't.
I think actually this is a bit. Might be a dark horse, even though I'm not voting for him, but I think Arian might do well.
Mm-hmm. One of Bruno's best opponents, and also great draw in Australia and Greece.
Yeah, so that's sort of the reasons. And then, I don't know. I don't. There's no one here that's
What about Johnny Saint? Because I think he's going to be the one that people gravitate towards, like of the Big Daddy kind of voters.
Yeah, well, like all those. Basically, all of Colt Cabana's generation are going to vote for him.
That's exactly the thing with him. It's like everyone credits Saint because he wrestled those matches with like Quackenbush and whatnot.
Well, they got the tapes, and he was the guy.
Yeah. Yes. And it's nothing against Johnny. He's a talented worker for sure. Like it's nothing against him. But
I don't think it put them in their proper historical perspective.
No, and that's why I was so happy Kid got in, because he was the actual influencer of this style that everyone points to. But for some reason, Saint got a lot of credit. To me, I've always said, so I'm a huge fan of that era of stuff, by the way. I know my reputation is like an anti-Brit Res guy, and it will be even more so on the show tomorrow that I talk about Royal Quest and the people I saw there. But I really love that era of European British style wrestling. To me, the best one and the one I would love to see get talked about a bit more was Steve Gray. I thought he was the best worker, and some of his matches with Johnny Saint were excellent matches. Saint was a little gimmicky to me. One of his most pronounced spots was the Lady of the Lake, right? Which is like you put yourself kind of in the Paradise Lock to lead to like a fake out move. I think others were more technically sound than him and better. People like Terry Rudge as well, I would point out as well. But he does, regardless of how it happened, even though it's kind of cheesy that these indie goofballs liked him and that's how he became popular, you cannot deny he wasn't influential, even if it's for weird reasons. I guess I would say on him. But as a worker, I would look elsewhere. But I could see him becoming a lightning rod candidate for a lot of people as well. Mexico, I will briefly go over. You said you weren't going to vote in this.
I would just say I would consider voting Hamada and Dixon if I did.
Both of those should be in for sure. Hamada, like if you look at the people he's trained, it's like it dwarfs almost everybody. The influence level is sky high, like Hayabusa level, just not with American workers that they know of, even though they actually were secretly influenced by him by watching others. And a fantastic wrestler, by the way, like an excellent worker in his prime. Dixon, totally agree. Great work in both America and Mexico in terms of drawing power, and very historically significant for being a black wrestler at the time and still being an effective babyface everywhere he went. Los Hermanos Dinamita should be in for sure to me. Like three legends, all part of the trios. And this is kind of reason to be a great point. So last year, Blue Panther made it in, well deserved, one of my favorite wrestlers ever, and Bryan Danielson also agrees. So you know you're right at the end if you voted for him. The Dynamite Brothers had 56.8, so they're very close. They were like the closest people not to make it in. Dory Dixon had 32.6. Huracan Ramirez had 31.1. Sangre Chicana had 28.8, along with Io Del Santo and Octagon. La Parca, AAA, not LA Park, had 22.7, and Angel Blanco and Dr. Wagner had 21.2. This year you've got El Dandy, Gran Hamada, Mascarita Sagrada, Psycho Clown, and Volador Jr. coming in. So here's the thing with Angel Blanco and Wagner. Here's how they would be like the top people on the ballot to me. If Dave took them off entirely and then put on La Ola Blanca, which had those two and Solitario, which is a significantly better case. Now, this team is good and worthy of a consideration for sure, but the trio was so much more legendary, like guaranteed. Like any Lucha Libre fan will tell you that. Like with Solitario, why not just put on the full trio? I don't understand. like why? Yeah, like just tell me this, Dave. On that end, like I don't know, but put them as a trio, they would be the number one people in this ballot. I also think now this is the thing. So you get 4 votes in Mexico, and that's going to lead to some hurt feelings to some people because there's more than 4 I want to get in, and they're really hard after those first 3. I would say Hermanos Dinamita, Dory Dixon, and Hamada are like slam dunks, should all be in. The 4th pick is like 3 guys who are kind of similar levels. I think. Oh, this is something worth mentioning too in the Europe region. So Johnny Saint and Huracan Ramirez are both on the 50% cutoff this year for being on the ballot for 15 years. So if Saint doesn't get 50%, he's out. Like he's getting cut off. And same thing with Huracan Ramirez, which I think would lead me personally to put him as the 4th member that I would put in. But I think Sangre Chicana and El Dandy both deserve to be in for sure. Like 2 of the best at their time. And I think Chicana, if we can get to a situation where we get more footage of him, I think he'd be like a slam dunk candidate for sure. He was an excellent brawler, among the best of all time at his style, and was very much a draw in Mexico throughout the 80s and early 90s as well. So well-deserved. El Dandy, one of the best, had legendary feuds along with not just that, but also his legendary, Apuestas matches in the early 90s. But he also had the amazing feud with Negro Casas and Io Del Santo in the mid-90s. Like, he was great for so many years. I think, unfortunately, the stupid Bret Hart promo is going to hold him back to some people. But maybe it'll make people, like, be biased and ruin everyone else's chances by voting for El Dandy. I don't really see a lot in the others, like the new people, Psycho, Volador, Mascarita Sagrada. Although I absolutely love Mascarita Sagrada's work in the mid-90s. He was so great. It's so sad how America treated him, like and a lot of the mini wrestlers, because he was so good in the ring. Volador, I think he definitely has a shot. I wouldn't vote for him, though. And I also think he's kind of miscast by the promotion. He's much better as a Rudo than a Technical, which he's been for like a decade at this point. But still, Psycho Clown, definitely no. So, yeah, Mexico, it's a really strong region. So, again, some people are going to get left out that should be in, I would argue. But that's how it goes with Mexico. Put La Ola Blanca on. It would be my final point on that. Last ballot before we get out of here, last region. Non-wrestlers. Unfortunately, your boy Seiji Takagi did not make the cut last year.
Fell off the ballot because he got left.
Oops.
Although, I guess it also doesn't. But if he had stayed on, it doesn't help the fact that he's taken a hiatus and but also no longer the head of Cyber Fight.
Yeah, that didn't help. But hey, give him another 5 years, okay? Like, he'll be back on there, provided Cyber Fight doesn't give up because of Noah and just back out.
That could also happen, right?
Yeah. So we've got Reggie Parks at 17.5%, Rossi Ogawa 19.1%, Bob Cottle 20.3, Joe Higuchi 22.1, Dave Brown 25 straight up, Roy Welch 25.1, Memphis 25s right now here, James Melby 25.4, Tony Schiavone 28, Morris Siegel 31.4, Grand Wizard 33.3, Stanley. What a great number for the Grand Wizard to have of masonry apparently as well. Stanley Weston 36.2, Larry Matysik 39.4, Mike Tenay 41.9, Ted Turner 43.1, Jim Johnston 44, Bobby Bruns 44.3, and Bobby Davis 52.7. New and coming back this year are George Scott, Kevin Sullivan, Koichi Yoshizawa, and Zane Bresloff. Just such a hard region to vote in. But yeah. What's kind of your vibe on this? Like, who are you kind of backing as the top candidates?
Well, Bobby Bruns is like,
yeah,
absolutely me.
Both Bobbies should be in. Like Bruns and Davis to me are the top two.
Okay, so let's talk about this because some people say that
only because he put in Wendy's. We know this, Gerard.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yes.
But and people are like, I don't see an argument against Bobby Davis, et cetera, et cetera. But let me ask you this, Dylan. And if I know anyone to talk about who might actually agree with me on this, it would be you.
Yeah.
He pioneered the heel manager. Could you not say that was actually a negative historical influence?
That's a great point because people, not necessarily him, but those who came after him, did it so horribly. But the thing is, I don't think the heel manager is a negative per se. I think how modern wrestling uses them is absolutely a negative and a poison to a lot of companies because they don't understand what actually made people like him, people like Bobby the Brain Heenan so great, or even Grand Wizard, who's also on this ballot. Those people were epic managers that did great things. But the problem is that as time went along, it got so watered down. It's like the piss version of what was something great. So you could argue that still. Like the fact is he did it, and it might not have happened if he didn't do it.
I mean, you can draw a line from Bobby Davis to Dick Togo.
Yeah, exactly. And would it be worth it though? Like, would it be worth it to get rid of Bobby Davis and Bobby
I'm gonna vote for him, but I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah. It's a philosophical question. I think it's totally worth considering because I think by and large now heel managers are 100% obsolete and should not be used, or at least how they use them. Again, like to me, if you know what you're doing, it can be great, and in particular, the right circumstances and the right context to do your cheating spots. And instead, everyone's just so damn lazy now. They do the same stuff over and over, like no creativity, no effort, just laziness. I hate it. So you did make a good point, but you cannot say that he did not bring
right now. Well, and it's interesting to look in 2024 right now. Would you say the most over manager is probably Nana, who's a babyface?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's definitely not Don Callis. I'll tell you that right now.
Well, I mean, Callis seems to generate real heat, though.
Yes, he causes many people to change the channel when he comes onto the screen. And also, again, so his stuff could work. We saw it with Callis and Takeshita the first week. But then how did they go from there, and how did they use them when they just did the same bullcrap over and over? And now Takeshita was wallowing forever, and hopefully they're getting away from that. But I think still most people think he would be better off on his own than with Callis as a manager. But that first week when they cut the promo, that was a money segment, but it got watered down and things got worse afterwards. Yeah. But yes, Nana is a very over babyface babyface as well. So we can agree on that. But yeah, so we agree on Bruns and Davis. Anybody else that you're looking at?
I've decided I'm going to go with Jim Johnston.
Yeah, you were kind of on the fence on him last year.
Yeah, but I'm like, yeah, actually, he sold a whole lot.
Yeah, especially because it's gotten so bad now. You see how much you miss it. Like, man, I wish we had these legendary theme songs we used to have.
I mean, what's that guy in AEW doing it now? I don't think
his name's like Mikey Ruckus.
Yeah. I mean,
he's got a great story. I don't dislike him.
He's got some okay stuff, but there's some stuff I don't like either. Like
Yeah, I agree, but I'm more positive on him than Def Rebel. I guess you could say.
And then more Seagulls feels like a obvious slam dunk.
Yeah.
Or his length of promoting and everything like that.
Yeah, why isn't he in? It's like one of those weird things.
Yeah. And then I got Ted Turner, Roy Welch, and Stanley Weston.
Yeah. You were big on Turner last year as well.
Oh, I'm huge on Turner. And
yeah.
There's a lot of very anti-people Turner because they just don't think he wasn't hands-on enough. But he changed the direction of wrestling just by opening his pocket.
You can't tell the story of wrestling without Ted Turner.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's led me to do the unthinkable and say I would put him ahead of Dave Brown on my picks. So here's the thing. I would go with who you said, Davis, Brunn, Siegel, Welch should all be in. I actually did a little bit more research on Welch like last year because he's kind of this guy, because you always look at him and Gulas, but then you look at how it actually went. Gulas was kind of like the face of the company, but really Welch was the one pulling the strings. Like, pretty much everyone agrees with that. Outside of maybe Ron Fuller, who says that they threatened people to start the company somehow and all this, whatever crazy stories he was saying on there. But yeah, Welch should be in. Siegel should definitely be in. Turner, I agree. You cannot tell the story of wrestling without him. That's one of my big arguments for Kidani. Like, I really think he should be on the ballot. Everybody else, like all of these guys are, yeah.
Kidani's best chance is when New Japan has him their uptick. I don't think he would do well if you put him on right now.
No, I agree, but I thought it was a mismatch.
Which is unfair because I probably would vote for him.
I think the voters really missed on that one, and I don't understand why, to be honest. Like, there's no good argument against him, in my opinion. Well, the problem is that no one knows how to judge this region because everyone's different. All of these guys are good in their own ways. It's like, but you're comparing again a belt maker to a music maker to a manager to the booker to the referee. And it's like, how do you judge them against each other? It's kind of hard overall, but they're all good in their own way. I wouldn't have any, like, there's nobody you could vote for that I would say, no, you shouldn't vote for him, because I think there's an argument for all of these guys. What do you think of the guys coming back on? George Scott, Kevin Sullivan, Yoshizawa, Zane, Breslov. There's one of those I think I would vote for of the four.
No, because no one can really tell. Like, it's like how much was him, and he had some bad runs.
Yeah, exactly. He fell off a cliff after a certain point, and like the business just passed him by.
Yeah, Breslov. He might have been very helpful for WCW, some of their success in the mid '90s, no question. I don't know if it really adds all up though in the end.
Yeah. I mean, it's a nice test, and I know that Dave was close to him, so it's cool. But and like I said, it's not that he didn't do anything, but I wouldn't vote for him.
Okay, so Rossi, I have some thoughts.
Oh, we're back to Rossi? Okay, what do we got on Rossi?
Oh, sorry, I thought you listed Rossi on the...
No, I was saying Sullivan and Koichi Yoshizawa were the new guys.
Sorry.
Rossi was on last year.
Yeah.
What about Sullivan?
Sullivan, no, I don't think it all adds up.
Yeah, I wouldn't vote for him either. Yeah.
So he had the influential double gimmick, but Florida didn't really draw. It just became famous, but it didn't actually draw.
His booking at the end of WCW was the worst. I think it was worse than Russo.
I mean,
in my opinion,
I don't know how much of that was completely his fault, but it wasn't great either.
Yeah, it was really bad when he took. I mean, he was shown the door pretty quick as well to get Russo back, and that was also terrible. The thing is,
not really that great booker. I mean, I don't know. It just doesn't add up.
I think Koichi's interesting, because everyone who knows him swears he's he's a legendary figure, but he's kind of he was the man in the shadows. Nobody knew who this was until he passed away, unfortunately, and now he's on the ballot, and you realize all of these people have come out of the woodwork and say how important he is to get the Japanese scene covered in America the way it did. And if you think about that, because Dave mentioned on his show, if it wasn't for him, Japan would have been kind of like how Mexico was covered for a long time in America. And I think that vastly changes all of our fandoms, like me and you personally included, if that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah.
I thought about voting for him, and I really would consider it.
But that's the thing. It's like that was from an era that we did not live through as well. We have the internet. We saw things, and all that.
But here's the thing. I think even with the early internet, he still played a major role until.
Absolutely.
When do things change? When torrents become available, then maybe.
I see, and I came along after that too. Like I came along later than you.
I would say, but. I think someone was it David said he started in like 1973 sending results.
Yep.
To people in the States.
Sometimes handwritten notes.
Yeah, so that's like 30 years. What torrent? Yeah. What 2002, 3, 4? I remember torrenting.
Yeah, Napster and all that.
Yeah.
BitTorrent.
I'd say he had 30 years of very, very important influence coverage of Japanese wrestling.
Yeah, I think I would vote for him just based on all of the testimony. He's been so strong, and to think about his actual influence on wrestling in America, I think again it was somebody we never knew about. But with the way, if you think about that didn't happen, I think that changes everything so much. And it's kind of like I feel like with Kadani, if Bushiroad doesn't buy New Japan, we don't have the Okada Tanahashi major run in America. Like things break out like that. Like it directly correlated with that. And Yoshizawa, we might not even get that far. We might have never even had what we knew with Misawa and the Four Pillars and the Three Musketeers and all of that. I mean, you just never know. So I think it's very vital and a very important role, I would say. Definitely better than the other three, who I think are pretty easy no's. But I want to know what you think about Rossi. No, like I said, tell me about this Ogawa thing.
Oh, here. I was going to say, first of all, I mean, I don't buy this that he has no case. And I would just like to say that, you know what? On the whole, I cannot call Marigold like one of the greatest promotions alive today, but I have generally enjoyed their stuff. I have generally enjoyed their stuff, and I still think they're a work in progress.
That's fair.
I think they actually could have an upswing once your Victoria Yuzuki's and Kazuna Tanaka's sort of mature, and if Mayu jumps next year.
Well, they have a fantastic champion right now. I will say that.
So I would say that the jury is still out and on Marigold. And I certainly wouldn't dismiss it yet.
I never bought him as like the Vince McMahon of Joshi, to be fair. Like I thought that was like an and I think we're seeing now an overcorrection to where like he's got no case at all. Like that's not fair either. Yeah, I mean 19.1%, he dropped a little bit, but I wouldn't he's been embroiled in controversy since last year's vote, getting fired from Stardom, tried to take people over, starting this new company. Started off with good acclaim. It's not like they were a huge draw, but they made the ballsy move and the gutsy move to run Sumo Hall like 2 months into their run, which was.
I'm not surprised at the business they're doing right now, given how many people.
Yeah.
But I think that there's definitely a potential for them in the future. I would.
Yeah,
cutting them off.
I agree. I think there's potential for both of those companies, like Marigold and Stardom. Like if they just need these new talents to really grow and more. And I think Marigold started off. They made a lot of mistakes. I mean, I've talked about it before. Like they did a lot of stuff I wouldn't have done. First and foremost, having Bozilla lose so early would have been something I would have fought hard against if I had to say in that. But in general, there's still a lot of time for them. And Ogawa, he's still done a lot of great things. Like as a promoter, you can't deny that. He's done a lot of questionable things as well. So I think he's about in a good spot.
Story of a wrestling promoter.
Yeah, like every promoter in history. Like even Morris Single, did he like burn down somebody's house or something?
Yes, I was going to say that.
yeah.
Nobody was injured, but still.
No, nobody got hurt, but still. So a lot of questionable promoting tactics over the years from everyone. What do you think of, the commentators here? Because I know you were big on Schiavone before.
Yeah, I was, but
and now you realize he's not that good, actually. Watching AEW.
It's not even that. I just like I did more thinking about other people. So I thought like my feelings about him sort of went down. It's just that my impression of others went up.
Okay, that's fair. Well, yeah, maybe you've got a good. Today had the highest.
I will just say this. Yeah. I know a lot of people really don't like him, but I thought he was great in like the NWA.
Yeah, me too. I like Shivani actually. I was just busting balls.
I thought he was great in WCW until what, 98 or
yeah, he checked out after a certain point. Who could blame him?
I think he was a huge part in establishing AEW.
Yeah, I agree with that. He's good and he's very excitable. Like I like that he's exciting. I think the whole team. I like when Nigel's on commentary more than Excalibur. Like more than anything. Like I think that helps everybody involved. More than Shivani being bad or good. But today had the highest vote of all the commentators, 42% last year.
I mean, you could make a couple of things with Tenay beyond just the commentating, but he had like a certain amount of influence about coverage of lucha in like the United States and everything too.
He's another one that like hugely vouched for Koichi, like at the stats that he brought. He said that he helped him get a job at WCW with his facts. What last one here, and I'll kind of round out everything. Because the other person I would vote for, what do you think of the idea of Weston? Because the argument for him, I think, is you've got Apter in, so why wouldn't you have him in?
Well, he did more than Apter.
Exactly. That's exactly why I would vote for him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Look, those magazines were important. They're important for me. Like, look, I always say this was the only copy of PWI I ever bought, but it was the PWI 500 in 1999. And it was very important in helping me identify who these Japanese wrestlers were.
Yeah. See, so I think he should be in. Like, you've already voted in Apter. I would vote for Weston based on that category. But it's unfortunate that I have to.
I'm sort of surprised, given the age of some of these people, that the magazines aren't treated like a bigger deal than they were. Like, I know some people like Chris Zellner and Rob Naylor will absolutely vouch for the power of the magazine. But I'm surprised.
Oh, yeah. And both of those guys are very knowledgeable and highly respected. Chris Z I've known for years as well, and they're right. And I think that's a good point as well. But I also think it's the flaws of this category again, because you're comparing the magazine guy to all of these other guys, and I bet there's a lot of voters that are like, I won't vote for anybody unless they were on screen. Like they were either a manager or a commentator. I've heard that take from voters that they don't think they can quantify stuff that happened outside of their screen on there. And obviously this is something like way outside of the box, or something like Koichi is another one where it's like you're really quantifying something that's hard. So it's a really hard category. And I think that's why you see a lot of guys with high number totals, they just can't get over that 60% hump here. But I
think Davis is going to go in this year, though.
I think so too. I think Ethan Tyler has like banged the drum so loud for him, that I think that's going to get him over the top. I think Bruns has a shot. I think as time goes along, again with Def Rebel being so terrible, I think Jim might be able to get in, like Jim Johnston. But we'll see on that end. So one last question here. This is something like totally off, like a total curveball, and we're going to wrap this up after. Considering everything that's happened here, that's something I was thinking about, and I'm going to throw the question to you and see what you think. As you know, Vince McMahon has put everyone through terrible things so many times, and it's finally coming to light like it should have a million years ago. You have this documentary that came out that a lot of people watched. You have total justified, like nobody should support Vince McMahon at this point. Everyone should want him out of wrestling 1,000,000%. Do you think that Dave will do a recall vote on him, similar to Benoit when that happened all those years ago?
I think what I think is going to happen is Dave is going to say, if you write me and tell me to, I will.
That seems like a very Dave move to make as well on there. But I
a lot of people that. But look, I'm sorry, you have to. But there's let me put it this way. It looks like with more things that have come out, like, okay, so without getting into the details, I used to think that Pat Patterson got caught up in, like, just Vince firing everyone because Vince would just fire all of his game employees in that way.
Yeah.
About who was innocent or guilty. But as it turns out, it looks like Patterson is guilty.
Yeah. I mean, it's a tragic thing.
Yeah. So the question is, like, okay, if Vince is getting votes, then Pat Patterson would have to get a vote. And it's entirely possible we'd have to be sitting here talking about Paul Levesque getting a vote out too, depending on what comes out and what he knew. Right?
You're right about that. And it's stated right in the voting criteria that this is not the Hall of Good Guys. Like, like they say that right away. But on the other hand, I do think that everyone has a line for that. But I also think you're opening Pandora's box as well if you do that for the exact reasons you said.
Look, now, if you don't like these people in there, I think a lot of people that might have gotten in didn't get in because of how things have changed. Like Mr. Wrestling 2 is never going to get in.
Right. Yeah, you're right about that. And he would have been a slam dunk before we knew what we knew about that.
And Rocky Johnson's never going to get in. Although I think he would have been on the line anyway, but he's definitely not going to get in with what happened to him.
True.
So, and I'm trying to think who else. There's even on the ballot with some questionable stories like Jay Youngblood.
Yeah.
Not good apparently, and stuff like that. So, and I'm not sure that he's going to get in. So, yeah, like there's people that are not going to get in because of this too, right? It works on the other way as well.
Right, and I think this one is a very unique case because it's literally like basically the biggest name in the entire industry, in the history of the industry, pretty much, that we're talking about. And I think that's going to put added scrutiny on it, more so than some of these other people that you talked about. Although I do think that will automatically open Pandora's box.
It's going to be Patterson and maybe Paul Levesque.
Yeah, exactly. And then those questions are going to come up anyway for those people as long as we're doing it. I guess if they did, and the thing is, if he did that, I think if Dave put that to a vote, he would get voted out. Like, I think in this day and age, yeah, because how they did it with Benoit is you needed 60% of the vote to vote for him to be out. And they actually got more than 50%, but they didn't get 60. So Benoit stayed in. And I think if Benoit's in there, it's hard, like, to compare anybody to such an act, But I mean, Vince has done so much that it just keeps coming out and keeps coming out, and he's such a big name. I could see that being a point of controversy in years to come now, especially this next year or so, depending on we don't know. Like, we don't know the extent of everything other than a lot of horrible things happened.
I think enough is known on Vince at this point.
Yeah, we know that. Like, we know enough now that we're even bringing this up as a potential question.
There will be other people.
Yeah, you're right about that. But I think it's something worth thinking about as we go forward in this Hall of Fame when that comes up at the end. Again, because of his status in the industry beforehand, that I think it's something worth thinking about, especially, he got away with so much over the years as well. Not anything to do with the Observer or anything, obviously, just with the legal system more than anything. He snaked his way through these terrible things that I could see people wanting any retribution they could get, even if it's so minor like this.
Oh, for sure. I mean,
yeah.
Unfair promotional practices to murder cover up to all.
Yeah. They take away all of this stuff now. Like you said, we knew enough long before all this came out. If you wanted to be,
the Grant lawsuit.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do think that there's going to be
call for it at least. Like, yeah, I could see that as well. I think it's, like I said, it will be something unprecedented.
Although here's the thing though, if, like, let's say in the next 3 months all of these lawsuits get settled, by the time next year rolls around and Vince remains, like, disappeared, maybe there won't be a groundswell when it also depends on how long this all drags out, I suppose.
That's a great point as well. And then you're talking about things we can't possibly know. I mean, I'm no lawyer like you're to understand.
Remember Vince the first time, how he, like, came back and everything, like.
Oh yeah, that was awful. Like I said, you can't. But it's something like it would be unbelievable for anybody else, but for him, it fits his MO to a T on there. So that was crazy. And like you said, we don't know what's going to happen overall. I mean, he came back once in that company already. Like, you can't completely write it off.
Well, I think he's generally actually done.
Me too. I do too this time.
But how much of a price he pays is still up in the air. I always tell people, be ready for him getting off mostly scot-free, maybe paying somewhere between $30 and $50 million a month. Payouts, and then he disappears.
Yeah, I mean, and yet you cannot write that off either. As terrible as it is with the legal system how it is and the power of money, it's just
when you settle, it all goes away. Everyone signs, confidential and everything. So,
well, I mean,
it's funny, but the other thing working against him is how stubborn he is.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, and he may just not even give a crap anymore. He's so old. He might be like, man, I can't give up now. Like you said, he's so stubborn. I can't change my ways now. And we're talking about things we don't know. So we'll have to see how it plays out. But I did think about that, like, with Dave doing that with Benoit before and having that recall vote. I think it would be an interesting experiment, even though I think they're like we kind of both said, you're opening up a can of worms that you can't really close if you do that. So we'll see what he does. I think it would be an interesting idea, a good idea, to at least gauge what his voting base thinks, I would say. But with that said, so many regions, so many people talking about. I said we wouldn't go that long, and I said it would be shorter than your Voice of Wrestling one. And once again, in typical Dylan Fox fashion, we are heading up to the 3-hour mark. So thank you so much for giving us your time, Gerard.
Anytime. And I look forward to doing this again someday.
Yes, probably right around this time of year next year. I did have an idea, like to do like a Gordy list type of show with you, like among the Japan candidates, because they have a lot of interesting questions on there.
I think there's a lot of good Gordy candidates if you look at like the historical voting in Japan too.
Yeah, I think that would be a good twist. Because like I said, I mean, we still ended up talking about everybody anyway, to be honest, that we did before. But, I think it would be a good twist because we've been doing it for the last few years now. And I always enjoy it. And we're always thankful for your time and love having you on as a guest. And definitely everybody's got to check out the Emerald Flow Show. They talk about Noah, All Japan, random companies you bring up. Sometimes Paul will talk about.
Cover great, okay?
That's true. Like I said, I think that's why. I think that was the real reason you said you would vote for CIMA, was to try to hype up your own show, try to build up all great people, like make them seem like bigger stars to help. But no, they really do a great job. I've been listening from literally the first episode. Really appreciate you and Paul, what you guys are working on over there. Anything else you want to plug or say? Like, why not give the floor to you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, mostly just listen to the Emerald Flow Show is my main plug. And I'll write stuff. I'll give you a preview of something I'm working on for voiceofwrestling.com, because I don't write as much as I do anymore. So I'm busy and everything like that. But I want to make the case that Rei Saito is the best big man in wrestling today.
Now, this is an article that needs to be published. Like I would say, it needs to be seen by the world. Like, why are you hiding it from us?
I know. I gotta sit down and write. I got like one paragraph done.
Oh, okay. Well, listen, small beginnings, my friends. Yeah. But I would love to see that. That would be an interesting case to be made. Rei Saito is great, and everyone loves them, as they should. And
hey, look, historical significance. Him and Cyrus were just doing the Fried Takayama spots a couple weeks ago.
There you go. Another case, another vote for Dylan's point earlier. Rei Saito does follow us on Twitter, so he may be listening to this right now as well. So, Rei Saito, thank you so much for honoring Takayama and Fry, and Cyrus as well. Another, who was the one that always took Cyrus's side on this show?
You know what? I thought I was going to say this. Now that I'm on your show, and I my own show, but you were right about Cyrus, and I was wrong. He has turned into a solid addition to the All Japan roster as a full-timer.
Striga, wherever you are, I hope you're hearing these words. And I know the listeners, I know there were a lot of them. It was a split category.
When he was announced as a full-timer, he had some very, very dreadfully boring singles matches. But since he got into Hokutogun and started getting going, he's been actually quite solid.
Certainly, Hokuto-gun is a faction with interesting people that don't quite line up, but they're still having pretty decent matches, I got to say. I was skeptical of that group at first, but for a mid-card act type of thing, I kind of like all of them, to be honest.
Yeah. I would like Jack Kennedy.
Jack Kennedy's not bad at all. I said, Jack Kennedy, welcome addition to the AJPW roster. So maybe some of these men will be talking about for Hall of Fame coverage one day. Hokuto Omori, will he make the cut in 15 years? We will have to talk about that. And I look forward to it.
Well, Dylan, I'll bet you $10,000 he did.
No one will take that bet, my friend. But as usual, I really appreciate it. Cannot wait to do it again next year and to do more stuff. I'm sure I'll come on and bounce around Emerald FlowShow again when the time comes, and you'll be on here for different things. It should be a lot of fun. Cannot wait for it. But most importantly, thank you, the listeners, for making this journey with us. 3 hours, lots of Wrestling Observer newsletter Hall of Fame coverage. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully you may even learn something from us. But most importantly, let us know who you think should be in, what you think of our picks and just the stuff we said. Do you agree with us or disagree? We had some friendly disagreements, all good stuff there. Love seeing it, love hearing it, and hopefully you did too. So with that said, I can't wait to talk to you guys again. I can't wait to see you again. And until next time, sayonara.
I'm here to go beyond my limit, not to compromise. And you can tell me if I mean it, looking in my eyes. Cause I've been waiting for my moment to strike. So come close, let me show you what it's like. Yeah, you can try and stand in my path, but you're gonna regret it. I'll be the one who laughs last while I'm making my exit. Cause this is only for the strong of heart, not if you get it. Then no matter what the outcome, you better accept it. Like you got how you feel, like it's very afraid. Come on down for a second, just get out of the way. What you say you feel, run away you go. Don't you feel like a rocket? Will the whole world know your name? When we dance, we're destiny. Yeah, I've been there and I've seen it. I'm never gonna stop believing. You'll find your flame. Oh, we can save the day. We won't back down. Alright. It's like I'm seeing double vision. Take a seat, I'm on a mission. We got everything to gain. To become everything you're not, you just give it all you got and take the pleasure with the pain. Yeah, I can feel my fire awaken, no time for being complacent. There's a dream on the horizon, you know we gotta chase it. And when we get to where we're going, then we start the invasion. Best me? No, you must be mistaken. Heck, you know I said you wanna run, right, you're right down the dust. You thought you were the best, well, you haven't been. Fire and rain, call me the hurricane. I'm not letting you go.